What's up, and welcome back to the channel. You are listening to Ninja Knight. This is Real Talk. So I've been away for a little while, and I said I'd be back here and I'd be doing a stream. So I was looking to do a stream last week with this gent. Resolving Reality is his name. He has a YouTube channel, and if you're not already subscribed to it, make sure you go over there and subscribe to it. But I wanted to bring him on because we've been talking an awful lot. We have through Twitter Spaces, and Twitter Spaces has been really helpful in getting to know other people that are in the movement, and again, people that have an interest in it. And this guy is, I would say, a scholar when it comes to these things, because he's after just bringing out a book, and the book is called Red Pandemic, and it's about the global Marxist cult. Now, before we bring him in, what I want to do is I just want to read out a piece of information that is on the back of it that I think is highly important and that you should know. So the critical issue in the world today is Marxism and Marxist indoctrination. This toxic ideology and its adherents are primarily responsible for the highly volatile and fragmented global situation at present, particularly in Western countries. This revolutionary ideology is the origin and enabler of many destructive issues affecting Western civilization, including mass immigration, the climate change movement, radical education of a certain nature, we shall say, falling birth rates and the unaliving of the unborn, the assault on Christianity, the destruction of the traditional family unit, the erosion of indigenous culture, the suppression of free speech, racial conflict, the mental health crisis, the breakdown of law and order, and the spectre of totalitarian world government, and the incremental creep towards another global conflict. The indoctrination fueling this cult movement is so toxic, potent, and well entrenched in the minds of the affected that this constitutes a global pandemic of insane, fanatical, coordinated, civilization-destroying behavior. This often mislabeled and little understood ideology has managed to stay somewhat hidden from public discourse until now. If there is one book to cut straight to the core of all the upheaval in the world right now and what we must do to stop it, this is it. So I'm delighted to bring him on. He is Resolving Reality. His name is Emmett Connor as well too. So welcome to the channel, Emmett. This is the first time you've been on, and I'm very appreciative of having you on. And then we've been talking, as I said, through Twitter Spaces over the last couple of months, and it's always been a pleasure chatting to you.
Thanks, Ninja. Great to be here. I'm glad we got this organized, and it's an honor.
Absolutely agreed on that one. Yeah, no, I was very looking forward to this one. I unfortunately had to postpone it from last week until this week, but I was always looking forward to it because this guy is the guy, as I said, guys, when you're on Twitter Spaces, you get to meet so many different people, and this is a chat that as soon as I was talking to him, I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. It's great. It's great to hear. And you've got a book, as I said there, that you've brought out. So I kind of wanted to start at the beginning of that. Like, what was the key moment, I suppose, that had your mind made up with what you wanted to do in terms of YouTube and writing a book then with regards to the topics at hand?
Well, at first, I wanted to do the podcast as sort of a media project. So I did a bunch of interviews in 2018 under the Resolving Reality brand. So I did about 20 to 25 long-form interviews. And then it was all about issues I was passionate about, everything that people would call globalist, all the stuff that we're dealing with, basically, all the things that you listed. And then I did that for a while, and I wanted to take a break because I just ran out of ideas temporarily. And we were talking about the workload of YouTube earlier. So I took a break from that for a little bit. And then I was changing careers in my day job, and I needed to keep a low profile, as you do. So I decided to stay creative, but to pick a long project that would take a long time to produce, pretty much. And so that's when I started to write and work on something that would take a while. It was supposed to be a documentary originally, but then it looked like it was going to turn out to be a book. And as for what kind of triggered me to do it, well, it was just a concern with what's happening in general, really. But the COVID situation combined with the BLM movement in the States around 2020, 21, that whole thing really kind of motivated me, because I thought, well, for people who understand what communism is, they understand the ideology. They know that it's basically crazy revolutionary activism, and it seemed to be involved with everything we were dealing with, yet nobody was actually calling it out. And the more I kind of start writing, the more I realized there's something wrong here, and that's what kind of prompted me to keep going with the book, basically.
Excellent. And it's kind of like what we've been talking about. Like, we've been talking about an awful lot of things with regards to what you're saying on the back of the book there with the feminism, with the climate movement and everything like that. And I was sending you a voice note yesterday, and I just will share this with you and with the audience, obviously, that are here. So make sure you're clicking like and subscribe and sharing the stream, guys, as well. It's very helpful when you do that. It pushes up in the algorithm, which is very helpful for all of us here. So we were talking about that yesterday, and I was saying to you that it's like we have like an innate nature ourselves that when you smell that something is off, and I think that like as you're saying there with the whole sniffle scam the last couple of years, that woke an awful lot of people up because that was kind of like the initial domino for a lot of people to understand. Hang on here, that's not right. And then they look and see that there's other things that are not right. And I found that as well with the channel that the more videos I'm putting out and the different topics that I'm speaking about, it's garnering a lot of attention from different people that are like, I feel the exact same way. And it's a nice thing to have this social media hub that people can come to and say, yeah, look, I was thinking that too. I think that elections, they're very questionable right now with the members of what's going on. You can see things that are happening in lockstep. We'll be talking tonight about the media as well. Like you see that the media now are saying that the far right in Ireland are communicating with the KKK. Of course, they don't want to talk about Robert Board being friends with Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton or anything like that. They don't want to say that, But what I think is quite fascinating is that once you've sniffed out one instance of hypocrisy from them, you sniff out an awful lot of other instances of that. So that's something that you've noticed. So as you said, you were talking about, you started off looking to podcasts and you came back and recalibrated as well. What has your experience been so far with the recalibration of what you're seeing now? Like what was the differences between then and now? Like have you looked at other points and said to yourself, God, I would have thought that was mental 10 years ago, but now I'm like, no, that's definitely linked in? Or was this something you always thought yourself?
Well, I suppose the combination of events made me think that what we're dealing with, this international totalitarianism, is a lot bigger than I thought before. That was the big thing. I used to see all the different issues that we described, like mass immigration, the feminist movement, so on, as just different agendas that were being pushed by the system, quote unquote. And I didn't quite understand that it was activism that was actually pushing them. That's the big change in me when I realized how connected they were. Even stuff like, well, the climate change movement, even something like veganism, and how ideas like that permeate into the pop culture. We talked about the entertainment industry before in our correspondence, how, it's just kind of spread around everywhere pretty much. And that was the biggest change for me since back then, was realizing how big this is basically.
Yeah, it's a massive difference, and like entertainment is one of the things that's tipped a lot of people off because when they get hit and drubbed with a message that's totally unnatural, like you hear about people putting messages, and like for example, Star Wars is one that's coming to my mind right now because they've had a lot of problems recently. But you hear George Lucas talk about the tales that he told, which was the rise of politics and how influential people can be and how they can use others that are foolish. Which is what episode 1 and 2 did. They used Jar Jar Binks as a comedy character in the Force and an absolute fool. And then in number 2, then they made him a politician, and then he ultimately gives the power to the Chancellor, who's to sit in behind everything. And you're looking at, and you're like, there's a lot of parallels to the real world there. So, when you look at current Star Wars, then it's all about bashing people that are longtime fans. And it's a very weird world to live in that you have people that want to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's this kind of, say, talking about the entertainment industry. Another example was the movie Barbie as well, a while ago, where they're trying to inject these mental ideas into all facets of everything, including the entertainment industry, in order to indoctrinate people and make them politically correct. So that's one of the consequences of a Marxist infection in society, is the degeneration of the arts. It's one of the things that falls apart. And this is very old. This obviously goes back right into history. But in the good old days, it was, you would see it popping up in newspapers or in movies or whatever back in the day, black and white films. Now it's popping up on people's smartphones, and it's in our faces. Like the whole system is being co-opted to push degenerate ideas pretty much.
I'm glad you brought up Barbie there because it kind of reminds me of a couple of things there, like of recent times when it comes to entertainment, which is you've got a movie that was supposed to center Ken as the villain, but it ended up then that most people walked away from that thinking he was the hero. So much so that his song actually was, I think they played it at the Oscars or something, and he performed it himself, Ryan Gosling. Like he became the breakout star. So this movie that was I should say, focused around feminism and the feminist movement, it completely backfired and it actually then promoted him and men in general, which I thought was very funny because I knew a lot of guys that went to go and see that movie. I still haven't seen it, but a lot of them are like, oh no, it was good. And then you have the recent instances of like the likes of The Boys, the TV series, which for like 4 or 5 seasons now, it's been trying to attack people. But Homelander is the best character in it, and he's the most well written, and he's the most likable character. And I think from a point of view, you look at that and say, well, he's the hero of the show. The boys are pure degenerates, you know what I mean? And they're up to no good, and they're engaged engaging in just total hypocrisy all of the time, whereas at least he's direct, and the writers of that show absolutely hate the fact that people love Homelander. They'll get the last laugh when it comes to the last season because they will kill him off like they did in the books. But at this moment in time, what they've tried to do is they've tried to say to people, hey, you should be a big fan of the cook that's in this show, Billy Butcher, and he's hounding a fella and he's hounding this kid for seasons now, and it's not his kid, and the guy has nothing to do with him. You know what I mean? Like, and this is the thing, you've got seasons worth of people supposed to be on the side of Billy Butcher, but you're looking at it and you're like, he's actually in the wrong if you're looking at it from our point of view, and I think once you've seen things from our point of view, everything else seems to open up. It's a bit like the movie The Matrix, and you look at the Wachowskis now, it's quite a weird situation, isn't it?
Yeah. The thing about this indoctrination is that the crazies, they think they're really clever sometimes. When you're talking about Barbie there, obviously it's going to work on people who are already brainwashed, or the very, very young was obviously targeted at kids. But what they don't realize how ridiculous they are to people like us. The only people who are going to buy into their bullshit are other brainwashed people. But as I talk about in the book, that's one of the transmission belts of culture is the entertainment industry. There's also the media and education as well. But, all aspects of society are being used to drag us towards degeneracy pretty much and to push agendas.
Yeah, a lot of people understand now that a lot of things are used, like you said there, media, education and entertainment, they're used as weapons. I mean, that's what Twitter is. Twitter is a weapon. And if you didn't know that, like, only the last couple of years will show you that, and you get people that you speak to and they parrot things like, you'd be very familiar with this on Twitter, look, where you have people that will say Elon Musk has ruined this platform, and you ask them how, like, quantify that. How do you think he has ruined this platform? And they can never answer. All they'd say is, well, the hatred has gone through the roof. And it's like, well, okay, from every side, not just your side, because 10 years ago you would have been abusing me, no problem at all, nothing would have happened to you. But if I said something, I'd be off the platform lickety split. And see, this is the thing now, it's a level playing field, and as you said there, these people don't like the idea of a level playing field. Sure they don't.
Yeah, the double standards are always evident. This has been a big thing, part of the ideology going all the way back to the 1920s when they start becoming international. And you can see the virtue signaling element to everything that they do. So Marxism, as I talk about in the book, is hatred personified. It's hatred for everything good about humanity. It's hatred for civilization, peace, prosperity, economic prosperity. We're talking about the arts, or brilliance in the arts. It's hatred for everything, yet they're the ones who call other people hate-filled first. It's classic deflection tactics, and they use it against us all the time. So what motivates people like us is love for sanity, love for peace, love for indigenous cultures and peoples, love for stability, prosperity, civilization, all the things that have gotten us to where we are today. So again, it's hypocrisy and virtue signaling, and also inversion as well. That's a big part of the ideology. They literally turn things upside down, because look at it this way: if you want to say the truth is over there, right? If you want to hide that fact, say it's over there. Just go completely opposite with it. It's one of the typical tactics that they use, inversion.
Yeah, I love that point they do with the point of inversion, because it's something we have been speaking about for the last couple of years. And it's like, it's if you said, it's like even recently there, I've pointed out in the video of the sky has been sprayed. And then you get the left end that are going, that's not happening. Or you have Minister Jack Chambers, and he's turning around and he's going, yeah, no, that's not happening. We don't know anything about that. It's like, you were actually telling me to not believe my own two eyes here. And I think when you bring that point to people, they're going, if you can see something point blank and they're telling you that that's not what you're seeing, what else are they lying about? And this is a big tip off for an awful lot of people, but it's the inversion and perversion, I think, of different parts of society. Like we've seen it last week there in Culock when it came to the protests. You have Gardaí that are attacking, assaulting, and I would say engaging in disgusting behavior towards our own people. Meanwhile, then they're letting and chauffeuring people into this country and into our areas that have no claim to be here and shouldn't be here at all. You know what I mean? And then you have people that are on the other side then, and people that are useful idiots, as you're talking about there with the media, and they're saying, cheering around, going, yeah, this is great. It's completely and utterly insane. And these people are, and it's something that you've spoken about beforehand, but I know it's something as well as the Turkish soldier just mentioned. And these people are in a cult, and it's a cult of non-existence, because this is where it goes.
Yeah, the idea, I think this is the worst thing that's ever to hit planet Earth, this ideology, because it literally brainwashes people into destroying civilization, including their own people and their own countries. So we're seeing that in Ireland, and my respect to the people of Culock and their struggle. I can't be there in person, but I know they're doing some great work. But if it wasn't, like what you said there, if it wasn't obvious by now that there's an anti-Irish agenda going on, the only people who can't see that right now are indoctrinated 100%. And that's part of my argument, is that people who can't see that at this stage of the game, there's no excuse for people not to know this is going on. So the only thing is, where do they stand on the issue? And though people who aren't against this with 100% of their being are kind of missing something as human beings. They've got some issues there. Maybe they're apathetic. Maybe they're apolitical. Maybe they've no confidence and so on. The neutrals, we'll call them. And then there's the brainwashed camp as well. But to tie back into what you were saying, there's undoubtedly an anti-Irish agenda in Ireland, as they prioritise everybody but the Irish. But this is also global as well, of course, not to distract people from what's going on in Ireland, but this is happening all across Western countries. Same agendas like the ones we listed: mass immigration, the trans movement, climate change movement, socialism, etc., etc. This is global, and clearly the Western countries are being targeted in a big way. And for several reasons, before I pass the mic over, it would be the fact that we're predominantly traditionally Caucasian, the fact that we're traditionally Christian, and also that we're traditionally free market capitalistic countries as well. And those are all enemies of the cult.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you're saying there, those things are all absolutely linked into what we've been talking about. And once you see these people attack one thing, they'll inevitably attack another. It's like, for example, you'll have a lot of interactions with people in real life and obviously online. And my thing is, when they're saying refugee is welcome, I'd say to them, well, why do you hate Ireland and the Irish people? And they can never back out of that corner, because they don't know. They're like, well, I do hate the Irish people and I do hate Ireland. You know what I mean? Like, they know, they feel that. So there's no point in them trying to lie about that and say, well, no, I don't. But then they'll inevitably say, then they'll usually attack Christianity next then. So that's where they'll go after that. Oh, you're a Christian fascist. And I'll go, well, what's that? And they can't explain that either. They genuinely don't know. Or, for example, when one of our guys takes a puck and they give a puck back, they're going, well, that's not very Christian of you. And I'm like, well, you haven't seen Jesus with the whips whipping the lads out of the temples anytime soon. You know what I mean? Like, this is the thing. Like, they all want you to believe, and like you're saying there, the brainwashing is an interesting fact there and point. They want you to believe their indoctrination and their facts as such. Do you get me? Like, you know, when I say their facts, it's what their perception of facts are, and yet they won't actually listen to someone else with a differing opinion and view. And I think that's what's needed. And thankfully we have look, my views are this, you know, he's doing well for us at the moment, Elon Musk, but we shall see how things pan out. But like, at least he's given the idea and trying to trade in the idea of free ideas and free speech and free thinking, because we're getting somewhere, I think, with that. I think we're actually progressing with that an awful lot than what they wanted to do. This totalitarianism that we've been under for the last few years it's not been good. It's not done any good for us as a people. And I think people haven't clamored enough for what they need to. I mean, I hear people asking ministers to resign from their position. No, get them arrested. You know, get them arrested out of that position. This namby-pamby, it's not a football manager, as I keep saying. You can't just ask the manager to go or for the club to sack him. You need to demand the arrest of these people. Like, Roderick O'Gorman should be banged up in prison tomorrow. And so should Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar and Simon Harris and Stephen Donnelly and all of these people. So when you have that then as well, and what I want to bring you to your next point then, Emmett, is the counterpoint then. So you've got blatant Marxism, as we know. Like, you've got some very radical leftists that are out there. Recently, you've had Paul Murphy saying that you let his child grow up and they be whatever gender that they want to be. So that's your example of a radical leftist. But then you've also got people that are, I'll just say it as it is. You've got Sinn Féin, for example, that have pretended to be a nationalist patriotic movement, and they're anything but. They're actually just sort of adjacent to the other guys there. Like, I've also called them fake opposition. They're going on a blocking spree on Twitter recently. What would be your idea, and how does that tie into the Marxist ideology of like this fake opposition? What's that about?
Well, the thing is, the first thing to say about the Irish government is that there is no opposition to Marxism in the Irish Parliament, the Irish Dáil, of course, which, you know, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. There might be little squabbles between them, but essentially they're all on the same page. And Sinn Féin have exposed themselves a long time ago as being a pseudo-nationalist party from their policies. And it makes me laugh, and I put this in the book, that you get a lot of Marxists in Ireland using Irish names. Now, Sinn Féin is obviously very old, but it just reminds me that they, you know, it's quite funny. You see these groups with Irish names on them, and they're anything but Irish, you know, Brits out, everybody else in, and all that crack. And they've exposed themselves. So, I mean, the thing is, though, people before profit, Sinn Féin, we can tell that they're PPP are overtly Marxist. Sinn Féin weren't, but now they've been exposed. And what I urge people to do is don't get caught up in the labels of what they're called or what their official stance is on the political spectrum. Look at their policies. You know, look at their policies. Look at what they're trying to push, and that tells you whether or not they're Marxist. Now, obviously, if people don't understand what Marxism is, they might not quite get it as quickly as they should. You know, some people, for example, will think Marxism is all about economics, and they'll look at only focus on that, but it's much bigger than that. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. But I think that Sinn Féin is, we know what they're all about. It's the other parties, like the other mainstream parties who aren't overtly Marxist. I consider them the same. If they're globalism is Marxism, so if they're globalists, they're essentially part of Marxism too, I think.
Yeah, we do have very much so a big problem with, as you detailed there, the fact we have a parliament there that doesn't have anybody that's representing us. I mean, you've got the Heidi Rays there, for example. You've got Michael Heidi Ray there that sits like a woman, you know what I mean, on the toilet. He doesn't. This is a very weird posture. Someone pointed that out in the chat the last time I was doing a stream. And then you see him then up in Dublin, and he's giving it large. Then I had to say, I thought it was very funny. He's giving it large in the Dáil about how he was insulted and how his family was insulted. And I'm like, this sham has absolutely, well, I mean, he's no care for anybody else, you know, and especially when they've been caught out with the various different things that they've been up to. But I thought it was great then to see him on the streets of Dublin when Kerry were up, and he got absolutely lambasted out of it by people from Dublin and people from Kerry. So the tide is starting to turn now, where politicians, when they're out and about, they are being turned on by the public. And I think that that's a fantastic thing to see, because for too long, I think we've been a culture and we've been a people that have sort of seen someone and said nothing, you know, that sort of way. So I think that that's a very big positive. And like you're saying, I think what's interesting about, as you were saying, people with certain names on Twitter, for example, it's one thing that people will draw back to me all of the time, which I find funny. Like the journal there recently did an article, said that they said there was multiple people with anonymous accounts online, and that they didn't like that at all. And you're very naughty for having anonymous accounts on Twitter. Of course, they're just letting you know that that's effective and it's working against them, really. But they were upset that there was people using Irish names and using like Irish words and all that. And then you'd see people then that'll attack me and say, well, your name is Ninja Knight, like that's not Irish. And like classic leftists. And I'm like, so the fact that I have a name called Ninja Knight should mean that we should have an open door policy and let everybody from every other kip in the world into this place. And yet I always explain, I'm like, because they can never get away from it. I'm like, the name is a Batman reference, and that's what it is. And I started the channel 3 years ago talking about comic books, and now it's kicked off into something completely different. Would I change it now if I was starting up? Maybe, you know, but now that's what it is. It's just the channel name, and I like it, you know. But going back on what we were saying there, you've got these people that are out there that are shilling for the machine and are constantly looking to twist things to try and tell you, listen, Paddy, you better like this or else, you know. It's constant threats. And then these people will say, oh my God, I can't believe people showed up en masse, and that's very threatening, you know. Like the Dundalk situation, which I think is sparked from Culock, has been fantastic to see. I've said it years ago, people in various other counties around the country, you're going to feel this. It's not just going to be in Dublin anymore, it's going to come to you, you know. So look, you know, as I was talking about there, we've got a very big important thing at hand, which is we've got a very serious regime that are trying to do and say things that are outrageous. I just wanted to get your thoughts and feelings on what's going on in Culock. Do you think that that's a big turning point, or what's your review on that?
Yeah, I think it's great, and as I've kind of said a lot of time in discussions recently, several times, that I think what's going to get us out of this mess permanently is understanding what's happening. So I'm not down. I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone. I respect all the great works patriots are doing across Ireland and other Western countries. But I think there's plenty of enthusiasm to fight, and there's plenty of determination. But what's missing is just that lack of understanding of what we're up against. And I see it like this. It's not, you know, sometimes you hear people saying it's the people versus the system or the state. That's not correct, actually, because ideologies don't work that way, as we know. It's about indoctrination, it's about personalities. So it's not the people, it's a portion of the population, perhaps the majority, against the state, but also, you know, the cabinet, the government, the mainstream media, education system, civil service, NGO complex, the cops, etc., etc. They're all working together, as well as the portion of the public that are brainwashed with globalist ideas, right? So to tie this back into Culock and why I think this is important, I think that to win this war and get out of this permanently, we need to actively reduce the amount of people in society who are brainwashed with Marxism. And that will bring more people over to the nationalist side. And then you're doubling, tripling, quadrupling your numbers. And that's what's going to make the difference. So say with Culock, say you've a few hundred cops there and so many people, the state's managed to contain it. As I said before in a recent video, I think that ultimately it might come down to force. And if it's going to come down to force, you want more people as possible on board and to crank up those numbers. So I think that Culock's a good thing. It's another step in the struggle, but I'm not like, unfortunately, and I don't mean to dampen any spirits, unless you've got the physical ability to take the state at present, you're not going to see any immediate changes, So that's why I think let's go for the source of the problem and start to win the ideological battle for hearts and minds, pull as many people over as possible to the nationalist side, and that's how we're going to get out of this mess.
I agree with you there. Like, I mean, the thing is, and I've said it at large and beforehand as well, kind of the guards at this moment in time, like I've always said, what you're doing is when you're facing off against these people, they're goons that are getting a paycheck. It's something that was said by the Marvel Comics character Daredevil recently. The difference between goons and a henchman is a henchman believes in the cause. The goon is just there for the paycheck. And that's what you've got with these people. These people are showing up. They're happy to do what they're doing. And it's just a typical Judas Iscariot behavior, really, as far as I'm concerned, 30 pieces of silver. And it's amazing how much we can kind of connect to the Bible and in particular the New Testament. But you've got, what I would agree with you 100% on, is an ideological warfare, and indeed I would say informational warfare, which the government at this moment in time I think feel that they are losing, because there are so many different channels that are popping up and there's various people themselves. Like, what I've loved to see in particular in Culock is I've seen people getting 20,000, 30,000, 4,000 views, interviews with various different media outlets around the world, and it's bringing more attention for everybody around the place as to what's going on. This isn't just an isolated problem. And when you have Sinn Féin, who made a big boo-boo, I would say, yesterday, when they said, we're going to diversify the richer parts of Ireland, like, that ain't gonna go down well either, you know what I mean? So all you're doing is you're gonna just bring those people over to our side, and I love that. I think that's a good thing. I think it's the more times these people make mistakes, don't interrupt them, let them keep making the mistakes, and all that happens is people walk over to this side. And we have seen that slow momentum. I mean, this time as well with elections, we've seen a massive outcome in the referendum recently, but also then you've got councillors that have been elected that wouldn't have been anywhere near a chance of getting a spot 5 years ago, and now they are. So as I keep saying to people, like, whilst you might think it's a great idea to face off against the goon in the street, and I understand and I hear you, but the head of the snake is the Dáil and the Senate. That's where the head of the snake is. And if you want to take this on and change things about Ireland, that's where you need to go, because that's how you affect things. The goon and the pawn is always going to be that. Like in chess, you always need to understand that you need to be the chess player, not the piece on the board. You know what I mean? So I think that's a highly important point that people need to remember, that facing off against some media in a uniform isn't the best of ideas. Start running for an election and take the seats off them. It is incredibly difficult, don't get me wrong, to do that, and a lot of people are disenfranchised with elections, and that's where I'll bring you to the next point here as well, to resolving, is your thoughts on elections in general. But a lot of people are disillusioned with that. But what I would say to you is this: we've only recently had an election and we've gotten people elected into councillor positions that wouldn't have, as I said, been there before. You've also seen the halving of votes for people like Hazel Chew, for example. Like, that's a huge thing to happen. Now, don't get me wrong, the globalist Marxists are still moving people into their positions. You're seeing like how a load of Indians that have just arrived into the country that are now been elected in Tallaght. Like, it's shameful stuff, And then you see the EU stuff then go on as well. People that you wouldn't have even crossed the street to say hello to are getting elected, getting 60,000 votes. Highly dubious stuff. But what's your viewpoints when it comes to elections on that one there, resolving?
Well, the globalist machine is desperately trying to cram in as many non-natives as possible and shove them into the political system. And we know why they're doing it, because they're going to support their own people. So the Irish are being marginalised across the board. And here's a controversial point before I keep going with the answer. We've all sleepwalked into this situation as nations, People tend to project the blame on the government or outside forces and so on. But as a nation, we've sleptwalked into this over the decades. and now the water's rising up around their necks. But to come back, so we can expand that later if you want, but to come back to the answer though about voting and stuff, say whatever the results were in the last election, they looked pretty good. Some people are disappointed. There was some progress made, etc., etc. But the big thing is, why is there not 5 or 10 times more people than that voting nationalist in the country? You know, that's the big question. And again, it comes back to ideology. Why are more people in Ireland not passionate about nationalism? For a whole bunch of reasons. It could be because they're brainwashed to Marxism, they think nationalism is bad, or else they're kind of on the fence, or they're apathetic, or whatever it might be, or they might identify as a centrist or a libertarian or something like that. I have to say, in my opinion, none of that stuff is going to work. I mean, I do respect some libertarian principles, and I think it's a good idea in some ways, but not as potent as nationalism, because to me, it's opposed to globalism. It's the idea of a country having sovereignty and separation from the international system, where we get to control our own resources, our own land, and make decisions about who does or does not come into the country. So why are more people not nationalists? That's the thing. It's the ideological, it's the rot under the floorboards that I keep coming back to. So, you know, the elections, it looked like it was a bit of progress. We'll see what happens with, you know, people like Patrick Quinlan and Malachy Steenson and Gavin Pepper and so on. We'll see what happens. But they are going into the lion's den and they're vastly outnumbered. So we'll see what happens, right? We're presuming that it will make an impact and things will change gradually over time. But we have to also look at the fact that in the meantime, the clock is ticking for the Irish demographically. And as we talked about, the more and more foreign nationals are going to be brought in, sent into politics, the more the numbers rise of non-Irish people being brought into the country who are going to support their own kind. You know, things have to move fast for us to get out of this mess, I think. And I have to emphasize the point as best I can that getting as many people passionate about nationalism is the only thing that's going to get us out of this mess.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And it's something that's been interesting to me, like for the number of years that like I've been looking at this situation. And beforehand, like I'd always been passionate about the country, and I love the tricolour, and I love the country, and I love my national anthem, and I love the language and everything. And you get people then, I never used to understand the people that would say, "Oh, I hate that, I hate the language, I hate this, and I hate that, it's stupid." And you're looking at them, you're like, "What sort of thinking is that?" You know what I mean? It's what a weird way to behave. And I always used to think that to myself, but now I think it's become more apparent for people. I think right now, I always used to think about when I used to go on holidays. You know, you go to Spain or you go to France or somewhere else there, and you're able to converse in your own language, and you see other people that are able to do the same themselves. Whereas, you know, if you were someone there and you're conversing in English and that's all you can do, and look, I mean, some people's situations just are what they are, and it's been hundreds of years worth of the British taking our language away from us, including the penal laws, which has led an awful lot to this. Like, that's why 100% an awful lot of problems that we have right now is that the British carry the can for the problems that we're subject to right now, because they took our language away from us. I think if we still spoke Irish, I don't think a lot of these problems would be something we'd be dealing with. Like, who's going to be moving here to listen to that language and to learn that language? It's an incredibly difficult one to do. You know, I don't see an awful lot of Irish people heading on over to Poland. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a unique language to Poland, and it's only very much so conversed there. Not to say it's just conversed there, but they still have a very tied in sense of nationalism and identity through that language, and it permeates through all of their society. You know, I seen one of their politicians there recently that was saying that Ursula von der Leyen should be in jail, and I was like, this is phenomenal to say, because they're and something that the Polish are doing, this is just to alert people here, because a lot of people don't know this because they're hiding this information. The Polish government have enacted a policy that says that there's Polish soldiers that are standing on their border, and if anybody crosses the border illegally, they are to be put down with immediate effect. That is incredible to think about. And only last week did they have a number of fellas that were attacking Polish soldiers, and the Polish soldiers did what they needed to do. Whereas we're here in this country and you're listening to folly from politicians that are telling you that the British are the bad guys, and that, yeah, we're going to welcome every other demographic in here into the country. It's bizarre world stuff. So like you're talking about there, you're saying that politicians, their water is rising up around their necks. What way do you construe that? Do you mean as insofar as the social media campaigns that have been targeted at them, or do you mean insofar as the amount of emails, or is that encompassing all of that they've received? Because they are now starting to talk about emails that they're receiving and at length. Like, you see in there, the deposit retention scheme, for example, they said they've gotten handwritten letters from elderly members, thousands of them. So they've been bombarded with these things. Do you think that that's something that's causing them a problem, or do you think it's something that they don't worry about?
I think that it's absolutely 100% natural for people to get angry at what's happening. And we talked about the word hate and hate-filled. These are terms that the Marxists use to try to, get their own way and to pacify people. And people getting angry about what's happened, 100% natural reaction to what's happened, 100%. And people have the right to get as angry as they want towards these people. I mean, they're so insane that someone like Helen McAtee, or I think it was Mary Lou McDonald recently, will complain about getting death threats recently. I mean, that's totally natural. And I know we're on YouTube here to keep it PC and all that. But going back over history, we've talked about this on Spaces, me, yourself, Mike, and so on. I've talked about this. And we all know what the punishment was for treason in the past, but because we're in such a pacified state of mind, and because of all of us being in la la land for most of our lives, then we kind of lose that. We lose that kind of viciousness and bite to us. And that's not a good thing, because if it's unfortunately, it's the law of the jungle thing, or whatever it is. If you're going to be too passive, sooner or later somebody's going to take advantage of that, whether on a personal level or on a societal level. It's going to happen. So everything happening to the politicians now who are being traitors is well deserved, and I hope that it increases. They're far too comfortable doing what they do, and that doesn't go just for the politicians who are traitors, but anyone else in the country as well. And this goes for anyone across the West. This mad internationalist movement, the audacity of them. They're actually destroying civilization. They're the most mental type of human being ever to walk the planet, but yet they complain when they get abuse or death threats and all that. It really is remarkable. And I talk about in the book about the nature of the brainwashing and how deep it is. And they actually believe they're saving us all from ourselves. They believe they know what's best for us. And, they're so detached from reality that they actually feel they're oppressed. So they're oppressing us, but they feel they're being oppressed when we throw back at them for oppressing us. It's all over the place. It's that inversion again.
Yeah, and it's inversion of words, like you're saying there, like, an inversion of the word safety. Like, when I hear safety now by these people, and I hear other words that they use in the red flags, and I believe it's the commie speak amongst them there, when they have like the words like solidarity, so they can find each other with a ping, no problem, they can, through statements or through social media posts or anything like that. But when I see them start making comments about how they're being treated on the streets, for example, I'm saying to myself, well, that's good, because you're starting to see a turn in people, because people have had enough finally. You hear politicians now that are not going to those protests that probably would have been welcome at them beforehand, won't turn up to them, because they know at this stage of the game that people know that the jig is up. If we've seen a brilliant one there the other day. I think it was Kevin Coyle done a video he put up on YouTube, and it was him confronting the media and them basically walking the media away from the site. I know Keto, that's in here, I'm sure he's in here in the chat here, but that also does the Spaces there, said the exact same. Said media were turning up to Culock, were basically ran out of the place, and not in a physical way. We're just told you're not wanted here, and as you're saying there, at this moment in time, like, you've got people complaining, which I think is funny. You've got politicians complaining about things, hurty words that are being said to them, but they haven't felt anything yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you see, I have to say, it's a big thing for me when you see politicians like Simon Harris there, and he's giving it the gusto and putting out his chest saying, these are a minority and we won't be dealing with the little soy boy. And then you see him, he's running around away from an old age pensioner in The Father of Enoch Burke. So like that whole machismo, that whole like personification and even like projection from him evaporates immediately. You know what I mean? Like, it's an incredible thing. It's like the night down in East Wall when Mary Lou was questioned outside the centre about what was going on, and she ran and got into a car, and she looked like a deer in the headlights. You can see that these people now are being approached more and more. Pierce Doherty put up a tweet yesterday. He was ratioed to bits in the tweet, because when you have Mary Lou McDonald, the leader of Sinn Féin, coming out and saying nobody has a veto, big Jabba the Hutt looking character she is, you see her telling you, you see her turning around saying no one has a veto who goes into their community. Yes, they fucking do. They absolutely do, because this is our country, and at least let's not forget that. Like, I have Eastern European friends of mine, and these guys are fascinating characters, and this is why, like, it is important to have friends that are in different circles and different lives and stuff like that. But these guys have such a different mentality than I do. Like, they actually think my mentality is a lot softer insofar as they're like, you guys haven't done enough yet, and I'm looking going, fucking hell. Like, these guys think of things and have done things, allegedly, speculatively, in their countries and their areas, have done things that I'm like, holy moly. And they're like, but this is why there's no fuckery there. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like, they don't mess around there. If someone's getting up to no good, they're letting know, and they're letting know very swiftly. Whereas here now, it's kind of like, well, Lasher, look, like Helen McEntee, it's another person that should be sitting in a jail cell. There's multiple people that should be sitting in a jail cell that run around that government. And it's a shame that we don't have a police force that has enough integrity to go and do what needs to be done, which is arrest these people for what they have done. You've Luke O'Neill there today, and I'm just tying it back now to all of the things that we've seen beforehand. You've got Luke O'Neill out there making the rounds again on the radio talking about the bird flu. That's another crackpot that should be sitting in the jail cell. Like, this is the thing, and I keep bringing it back. Not only have they now had our country be invaded, because it's very obvious to people now when they look around them, but they've also stolen 2 years of your life. Like, I want revenge. I want payback for that. I want retribution for that. And so should everybody else. They should want these things, and then they try and catch it in the whole, oh my God, that's not nice. You shouldn't say these things. Like, get fucked. You were the person that wanted me not to be able to go to funerals of loved ones. You know what I mean? You wanted people that I knew to be sitting in a hospital alone. Like, no. I'll tell you one story before we kind of kick on, because this goes to show you the depravity of the people we're dealing with. Like, I know a person that unfortunately they had Alzheimer's, and they ended up going to a home, and their significant other was stopped from seeing that person. They were behind the glass. And obviously as well too, without physical interaction or anything like that, or being able to sit beside someone, that person's mind went quicker than it would have had beforehand. These were all direct policies that were enacted by the government that they should be held accountable for. And now you have these weasels like Micheál Martin, not a spine between them, turning around saying, we're going to take a no-blame approach here. What? Like, this is insane levels of stuff. But they're obviously getting the directions from up above, because, as I said before, we've got bureaucrats here that are just doing the dictation of what the EU are telling them to do, or some other nefarious group like the Forum. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The again, even the COVID thing, I attach that to the same thing. Is we moved in lockstep with the international community. It was like a global agenda. The COVID agenda was clearly global. Well, we can get into that if you want, but the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party was involved with that, because it came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I put that in the book as well. I actually believe it was an economic attack on the West. We can get into that if you want. But in terms of how it affected us, again, the reason, and COVID has a section in the book about this, the only reason COVID affected us in Ireland at all was because we're obliged to take part in the internationalist agenda like everyone else, because we've no control over our country. So, the United Nations and its subsidiary, the World Health Organization, and so on, they all had a big say into what happened in Ireland, what people put into their bodies and what we can and can't do. Obviously, there was communistic overtones as well, when you're told how many people can be in the house, whether or not you can go to work, whether or not you can go to work and run a business or make money, So they're taking away people's financial independence, which is very socialistic, that you're supposed to be dependent on the state. Also dishing out COVID's payments and all of that as well. It's more the welfare state thing, which is tied into socialism as well. So that thing had the fingerprints of Marxism all over it. And it was a terrible time. But looking on the bright side, if that's what it took to wake people up that we live in a controlled world, then great, And when it happened, to be honest, on a personal note, when this happened first, I actually thought the whole thing was made up at first. I thought someone's playing some sort of card here. This is a joke, right? But then I realized, okay, there is something going around, but it is no more than just like the flu or whatever. But really showed that there's still, though, however, it woke up a lot of people. There's still, though, a lot of absolute goofballs in the world, right? People who totally believe what they're being told. When you're walking down the street and someone drives past you in a car wearing a mask on their own, you think there's no help for humanity here. Or one time I was walking down by a canal in the countryside and someone jogged past me. They were literally 5 meters away with a mask on out in the open air. So that reminded me that, there's no hope for certain types of personality in this world. Unfortunately, they're dragging us down with them, with our gullibility, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I mean, I might have been watching the TV show, and I know I'm taking it back to entertainment, but I think it kind of, sometimes you watch something from years ago and you're like, geez, they were right then. And then you see it, not only that then, but it also like the vibes that would have been given off at the time. And I was watching the TV series Rome. If anyone hasn't seen it, check it out. But like what you were talking about there, like the sheepishness, like that just didn't exist then. Like those people were just eliminated, and like eliminated in multiple ways, whether it would be just, out, you're gone out now, you have to go and live in a different place, or through other means, through what Caesar is doing, for example, in that. And like these people all, like at that time, had shorter lifespans than what we do now. And you have with the idea of a shorter lifespan, I think a lot of people at the time tried to cram in as much as they could, and if things weren't going their way, they were like, right, we're changing this, that's it. Whereas now I think we have the prospect of a longer lifespan, and I think a lot of people are like, oh well, I won't rock the boat too much there now, I won't say too much, I won't do too much now. And I think that's why it's a very important thing that people have been turning up to protest and have been interacting with each other, and it grows this movement then. And like we've been speaking about earlier on, it's been something that's an authentic movement, because people are turning up, they're doing it for free, they're not being paid by any NGO, and that there's far too many NGOs here in this country, and we'll touch on that point now in a moment with regards to them. But there's far too many of them in this country, and under a nationalist, patriotic government, I'm sure they would ban an awful lot of them, because that's what needs to be done. But that sort of attitude of I'm all right, Jack, has been permeating through Irish society for a very long time. And right now I think we've started to see people start to say, whoa, hang on here for a sec, I'm working, the missus is working, we're not able to see the kids are in daycare being raised by other people, and not only now are they being raised by other people, but they're being raised by people that you don't know who they are, where they're from, what sort of values they have. And I'm talking about people that are your own people also. But what's happening is, through this whole movement that the government have made and the trick of feminism, they've tricked a lot of women into the workforce. But not only that, now they've also then devalued those jobs. So when you go in and you hear people on the left hand side say, well, look at all the nurses that are immigrants. Sure, but I've talked to a lot of people that have gone in and can't understand what a nurse is saying, or is completely incompetent in what they're doing. Not to say that they all are, but why is that not our own people? Why are our own people then going off to another country? Like, what's going on there? And people would say, well, it's the shift work, it's the wages. And when you have someone coming from an impoverished country, of course they're going to view anything as a positive and a benefit. Whereas their people have a standard of life, and you're going, hang on here for a second, it's regressing. So they're making the move over to the likes of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East and all that. And that's various different professions. But that's all intrinsically linked to this problem then, because whilst you have people that are going over to make a better life for themselves whilst working, you then have the flip side, which is, well, you've loads of bums coming into this place that are looking to do nothing. So for every one, and I keep saying to people, for every one foreign doctor that you have, there's 100 people that are coming in here that are at nothing. Do you know what I mean? Or are doing low-skilled jobs. Like petrol stations, they used to be manned by 13-year-olds. They used to be manned by 15, 16, 17-year-olds, maybe even a 13-year-old. Like years ago, where they'd be just going from secondary school into there, then during the summer for a bit of summer work and all that. Now you're going into them and they're manned by people that are not from the country, by and large. Do you know what I mean? So like that little summer job or that little earner on the weekend for that lad has gone away. And whether he's saving that money or not now, it's not a possible situation. And of course, then with the rising cost of living, it's never going to be attainable for someone like that to get a house, because when you have people coming into this country, as I keep saying, you have people coming from different demographics and different cultures that are buying houses together. Like Asian people, for example, they will join a group of other people that are Asian and they will buy a house. They will blow you out of the water. So your prospects of getting a house are slim anyway, but they've been even slimmer since these people have come in. And look, different people have different ways of looking at it. They'll say, well, everyone's entitled to a good way of life, not that. But yeah, listen, China's a much bigger place. Go and live there. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing. You need to be looking after our own people first. Our own people are very important. So what we were talking about there as well, Emmett, we were speaking about the NGOs, and I wanted to bring you to that point then, because this is another arm of the government, in my opinion. They say non-governmental organisation, but you know that they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So what's your viewpoint on them, and how are they used in this informational war?
Well, the NGO complex is pretty much a scam, right? It's a scam that's used on a country to propel Marxism in various forms. So it might be anti-racism, pro-migrants, it might be feminism or abortion rights. So it does two things. It's promotion of Marxist sub-agendas or initiatives, while simultaneously draining money from the economy, which is an attack on economic prosperity, which is Marxist as well, because it's an attack on capitalism. They want to replace capitalism with socialism. So these non-profits, a non-profit by nature doesn't have the ability to generate profits, right? Which we all know. So where is it getting its money from to function? Well, it's either going to come from the taxpayer or it's going to come from some other source. Whoever is donating towards it, it's a waste of money, unless they're Marxist and they like help Marxist activism. So the NGO complex is an important part of the whole mechanism, and you know, when you look at, again, I put this in the book, where you look at the language they use, very few of them will say we are a Marxist organization. They won't say we are the communist, anti-racist, whatever. They won't use words like that. But you'll notice in the other keywords they use, like they'll talk about social equity, or they'll talk about being progressive or liberal, or something like that. You know, they'll never use, or they'll say solidarity and so on, and they'll take jabs at capitalism or Christianity or whatever it is, but they'll never market themselves as being a Marxist group. And that's one of the functions of the book, and I talk about in the book, is that people don't know what they're looking at because they don't have the knowledge. So if you ask the average person in the street who doesn't know anything about Marxism, and you ask them a bunch of questions about all these different NGOs, they'll probably never mention the word Marxist revolutionary activism, because they don't know what to look for, because they don't know the language they use, and they don't know the agendas that they want to push. But, you know, I'm sure not all the NGOs are the same, but I'd say the vast majority of them in Ireland that I know of, I can only put, like, say, 40 or 50 mentioned in the book briefly, but I'm sure there's more, and they're pushing it. You know, there's silly ones like Friends of the Irish Environment, you know, the fruitiest, silliest names you can think of, all based on a Marxist conspiracy theory that if we don't reduce CO2 levels, the Earth is going to explode, you know, and they're actually absorbing money from the economy that could be spent somewhere else. So it's all, the whole lot needs to come down. Some of the many things we need to pull down if ever we turn the country around, sort of thing.
Yeah, and like you're talking about there, the language that they're using as well is important, because, like you're saying, the fruity terms that they use, it's what they do. You know, it's like what they say, they go, women's healthcare. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means unaliving a baby. That's what that means. You know what I mean? And then we've seen other things as well, like where they're talking about trans rights. Well, what's that then? That's actually pushing people to go and do something that's completely irreparable, and you can't do anything about that. It's permanent. You know what I mean? And then you've got people then that later on in life then will realize, whoops, made a big error here. And that's why you have a high rate there, in the 41%, I think, is a rate there of a certain situation that they end up getting up to. But what you have is that flowery language. And I just wanted to touch back on something you were talking about there earlier on about the NGOs and the fact that these people have this sort of common goal. It's the unification to me that's quite interesting. And as we're talking about America as well, America is a good point to touch upon. And I know people will say, well, we're focusing on Ireland, and we absolutely are focusing on Ireland as my prerogative. But you got to look at what's going on around the world and how the plays are going on there. So, for example, there in America, when you're looking at the Marxism and the leftism that they are doing, they have told you for the last 4 years, well, longer than that, 8 years, that Donald Trump, for example, is a threat to democracy, threat to democracy, threat to democracy. They're the side burning down buildings, looting places, causing massive carnage, billions worth of damage there. And now they have had a situation that has popped up, and see, they don't want to talk about what happened to Trump either. This is how long I've been away. That whole situation happened with Trump. You had people that were out there, right, that were on the left, that thought that someone staged that they set that up. People clearly haven't fired a weapon before to think something like that. There's no way you make that hit at all. You know what I mean? So there's zero chance. Like, I think the probability of you being able to make that shot from that distance is incredibly low. People don't know anything about bullet velocities. They don't know anything about humidity. They don't know anything about wind movement or anything of the bullet. Like, to try and do something like that as a staged idea is ridiculous in my view, and for him to turn at the right time as well. But anyway, I digress. What I mean by that is, and about the unification of the left, for the last 8 years, they've talked about democracy and threats to democracy. Joe Biden has just funneled more money over to foreign countries than ever before. They've engaged and are trying to get boots on the ground across there in the country with the blue and yellow flag waving. And now they have had the guy step down out of a presidential race until November, I think, is the time that the election comes. So you have told us that he is not fit to run as a president again. And I understand people that will say, well, you have to see out the term. It's like a contract. But if you were telling me in July that you're not fit to run in November, well, then what are you doing here? Should that the de facto position not be you step away and that the person that's there second in command becomes the president then? And that's what democracy isn't. Do you get me? Like, this is what these people think. They think, oh no, that's totally normal that the guy can stay there and we'll just puppeteer him for the next couple of months. Like, that's insane to me. And the side that have clamored and said to you, hey, democracy, 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 are the same side that are doing something like that. And then are trying to push her on the next ticket. You're like, well, why don't you give her a whack of it for the next 4 months and see how things go? If you're really democratic, give her a go for the next 4 months. Step aside altogether, good luck to you, and give her a whack at it. No, you don't want to do that. Like, I think that is absolutely fascinating to me. And again, the shift went from, and it's all timing as well, the shift went from Donald Trump, an attempt on him, and I think Jones has done a very good job there on the Tim Dillon show explaining what went on and how things were supposed to be planned out. But you have now a situation where I think they're in panic mode. They don't know what to do. They didn't expect Trump to survive that. So they don't know what to do now. They're going and going, what do we do? Because these movements are kicking off around the world, where you have what's happening in Ireland is permeating and resonating with people around the world. You see the same sort of stuff going on in France. France has just come out of an election where that's been totally and utterly taken through nefarious means. And again, the uniting of the left. And this is something that they have been showing us for the last number of years, that they're afraid of us uniting. Like, I always find it funny, and this is just me thinking out loud, I always find it funny when they're turning around the media in particular, because whatever the media say, I usually tend to do and think the opposite. And they say, gangland figures attached to the far right. And I'm looking at it going, that just means that people are afraid that if there was ever to be any sort of pushback, that there will be a means of which people would have some friends in certain places. That's what that says to me. You know what I mean? And I think what we do right now is, I think we're starting to look at things like that across the board and say, what are they saying? Well, it's the complete opposite. We're doing this for your safety. Well, if you're doing it for my safety, how come you're not shutting up the border? How come you're not doing more security checks? How come you're not deporting more people? Well, we're doing this for your safety by giving you an experimental Voldemort there. Okay, well, how come insulin isn't free? Why is that? Why is chemotherapy not free? And I think once you'd start to apply those little things across the board, it starts to wake you up a lot more. But I do agree with you in saying that these people are united across the spectrum of what they are doing across the world. And I think the fact that they go to, and what makes me laugh the most is they go to secret meetings behind closed doors and tell you that that's totally okay. You don't know what they're agreeing to behind those things, you know. And what would your thoughts be with regards to that?
Well, the interesting, you mentioned the attempt on Trump and then the elections in France. Writing about this in the book, obviously the book's finished before these things happen, but whenever I see stuff like that, I just think brats having tantrums. Right?
Mm.
It's a big problem with these cult members, is that they're like brats. When they don't get their own way, they have tantrums. Well, I'm not talking about a 5-year-old having a tantrum over an ice cream, right? We've all been there. But I mean, violent tantrums when they don't get their way. This cult, when they don't get their way, you'll see some sort of violent reaction. If they can't do it by legitimate means and using the system, they'll go off road, they'll start threatening people, they'll start burning buildings or shooting people, and so on and so forth. So the elections start going against them in France, then they have a big tantrum on the street. And now France has got a big, long, dirty history of Marxism all the way back to the French Revolution, which was the seminal proto-Marxist event, you know. So they're riddled with Marxism over there. But you saw what happened. They had their tantrum. Things started to swing back the other way, right? And then in America, you can see, despite everything they've done in the States, and the White House is compromised as well, obviously, by Marxism. Biden, controlled by the, was bribed several times by the Chinese Communist Party through his son, Hunter, which has been exposed before. So despite everything the Marxists have done there, still the Americans have that strong patriotic fighting spirit, which is beautiful to see. And so the Marxists they'll try and pull out more tricks. No doubt they'll have a go with him again. Kamala Harris, she's like an avid feminist, so she's another cult member, you know what I mean? And so hopefully they'll get out of this mess. But again, this is global. And to go back to the thing you mentioned right at the start, sometimes people say, why aren't they talking about Ireland more and the political parties? I'm like, hang on a second. My response to that is, hang on a second, because people need to understand this is global and we have to know our enemy. And the key to get out in the struggle in Ireland is to really understand the ideology of Marxism. And that's why it's good to study other countries as like case studies to see what tactics are being used there. The cult has lots of different tactics and systems to get what it wants. And it's not going to use the same ones in every country, obviously. So America, for example, has got a different ethnic makeup than, say, Ireland, which is a bit more homogenous. So they use different things. They can't really, they can't use certain tactics here that they would do in the States and vice versa. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, they're trying though, for sure. Like as I said earlier on, where they're trying to link in this KKK guy with Irish people. Like I think that's absolutely hilarious. I found it very funny because I said to myself, these are the same sort of tactics that I've been watching channels like Salty Cracker, for example, for years now, and I'm looking at streams belonging to him, and I'm saying to myself, these are the same types of tactics. Like he will do something on a stream, and I guarantee you, about 6 months later, they'll attempt the same thing here. That's what, like, usually an awful lot of the time you're ahead of the posse when you see what's going on in America, and that's what they've been doing for years in America. This guy is attributed to the KKK. Like, who? You know what I mean? It might have been one guy, and he's hanging around with a group, and sometimes those guys are purposely put there to just sully the name of someone. Like, it depends. That these things are played out in so many different ways. Like, the most recent one I've seen as well is that they want to jump on. I've seen is Tommy Robinson.
Exactly.
And listen, I couldn't give a fiddler's what Tommy Robinson is or does. I know who is supporting him, and I know who he's supporting as well too. And I mean, that's a very big problem in the Middle East. But Middle East aside, I don't care, for example, if that guy is sharing stuff belonging to Ireland and is showing people, as many people as possible, as to what's going on here. Like, I find that useful, right? Whether I personally agree with the guy or not is a completely different situation. But at the very least, he's sharing what's going on. The same way with various others like Rebel News. I've again, another situation where I'm keeping an eye on them, and I know what the gig is there as well, because you do have people that are out, and I'm not saying Rebel News are, but what I'm saying is you've got lots of people that are out there that are pretend opposition and that will be false to a point. And you got, like, say, for example, the Daily Wire. I mean, Ben Shapiro only 2 or 3 weeks ago came out and was talking about, I think he used the term like courting, pulling, or something like that, which was basically censorship. He was just using, again, flowery language around it. So never underestimate these people, that they will have both sides and they'll have a lot of people wrapped up in that. But I'm going on about the point of, you have these people that are linked in with each other that will control both sides. So when it comes to someone that has tens of millions of followers, or if they've 50 million followers, or if they've 10 million followers, or 5 or 1, they're sharing the information out there and people are getting on and they're understanding what's happening. Like, it's like Conor McGregor as well too. Wherever you have an issue with Conor, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, I don't care. The guy has 10 million followers and he's showing what's going on around the country. Call him what you wish. I couldn't care less, because I guarantee you this: whatever he has done, the people that are in government and the people that are running things have done worse things behind closed doors. Okay, so that's what I'll just keep telling people. And you got to realize that this is the way we're looking at things right now. This whole, like, what we see right now, for example, I see a police officer there last week that arrested Philip Dwyer, and according to Philip Dwyer, that's the same police officer that assaulted him in town in November. Now, my viewpoint is this: if I was Philip, I would be ensuring that that fella is charged at the very least, or I would go further about it, because that should be what should be done. Because why is that guy just picking up Philip for what seems to be no apparent reason? That seems to be targeting to me. So why is that happening? Why is that allowed? And that should be pushed on as far as possible. And so should it be with any of these other people that have assaulted people. If you were assaulted in Culock and pepper sprayed and you've got Gardaí smiling your face and assaulting you, go as far about it as possible. Because what you need to understand is this: the enemy doesn't have any sort of morality. They assume for you to have a morality and for you to have your principles. Your morality and principles are grand. But I tell you what, these other people have none. So you got to understand that this is the fight that you're in. You're in a boxing match with people that are going to put knuckle dusters on underneath the gloves, and they don't mind. You know, like, the rules have changed. So this whole idea of having morality and a moral compass now, that it's done and over with for an awful lot of people, and it's a sad thing to say, but that's the point where we're at now. We're in a wrestling, not even a wrestling match, but a boxing match with people that are up to no good.
Yeah, and you know, I lose my monitor, so there's a dog barking there. What was I going to say? Yeah, so with all that stuff, you mentioned Philip Dwyer and stuff. So what I think they're doing in that case is that they're trying to, you know, intimidate. They go after the big fish in order to intimidate and so on, and, you know, suppress the flow of information and so on. So people don't have to. I think what people have to remember is that they don't be demoralized. You know, keep going and don't let the state get any success, because they're only doing stuff like that to try to demoralize. So we should get more people involved with, you know, these streams and documenting events as they happen. So then there's too many for the state to deal with. Yeah. And as for the other thing you mentioned earlier about really important stuff about, say, Tommy Robinson and all that, we know what the Marxists are like. Look at all the stuff that they're pulling on X when everything's going on. What they will do is they will say, oh, you know, the loyalists in the north are allying with British fascists, and that's what's subverting the Irish political system. That's why all the nationalist candidates are getting votes. You know, they'll come out with shit like this because they're obsessed with the ideas of imperialism, fascism, and so on. The whole Tommy Robinson thing, again, he's a divisive figure, but what's his main thing is he's against the Islamification of the UK. That's his main bag. through all the propaganda and what people think of him and his ties with Israel or whatever, his main thing is anti-Islam. And we know the Marxists have an alliance with Islam going back in history. So of course the Marxists are going to go after him, and in their mind he's evil, and they try to associate us, the Irish patriots, with him because they think it's going to tarnish our reputation. But we should all know, I suppose we shouldn't worry about it, because we all know what we are. We know what Irish patriots are, and it doesn't matter who anyone tries to attach to us. It's not going to change our identity, and we shouldn't buy into any of that bullshit. And they're obsessed with imperialism, fascists. They think we're all evil. So the only people listen to the propaganda is their own kind anyway. So it's not going to be effective.
Well, I just want to point it out as well, because you host a number of spaces, and I've seen you interact with these people, and you've had, in particular, a lot of members that to be here on the channel, and Satirical Soldier in particular has done spaces as well with yourself and Keto and Thoughts Toby, and you guys have brought up leftists in conversations, and like I didn't know until the other day, but I seen Satirical Soldier messaging one prominent idiot. I was going to say another word there that I was going to say another word that was more applicable with YouTube. These people are here, they don't want you to tell the truth an awful lot of the time. But when you have, for example, people going on to spaces like I've done before and I've engaged in with it, like you're literally talking to people that either they're like the scarecrow out of Wizard of Oz, if I only had a brain, like this is what you have with these individuals, because these people aren't capable of independent thought, and they're not capable of seeing different points of view. Like, I think it was on one of your ones there recently where you had someone that was screaming about me being a fascist, and I'm like, but what is a fascist? And they're like, you. And I'm like, so personifying it as one person, is this what it is? But like, they can't say these things, they don't understand. But Satirical Soldier is on one there the other day, and I sent him a message and I said, I can't believe you were on for 2 hours talking to that absolute gumbean, because like you're wasting your time with people like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's funny, don't get me wrong, and I think it's very funny to bring them and make a mockery of them. But utilizing them is usually and very important to go look at what this person is doing and thinking, because this is how they're affecting others. It's like me recently. Like, my newest friend now is Dre Cannon. I love this guy, because every time he opens his mouth, I'm like, this is great for our site. All I have to do is post up a video and say, look at this guy is saying, and people are just instantly going, fuck this. Do you know what I mean? I don't even have to do things anymore, because these people are coming out and saying things so overtly stupid and overtly anti-Irish. It's just so easy to say, well, look at what they're doing here. You've got politicians then to link that in. Then there's no connection between crime and migration. Fantastic thing to say, because that would be a clip that's used forevermore. Here, look at this here. We got a guy there last week there that was sentenced to 11 years. Azim was his name. An Irish name, as you know. Yeah. And he was after attacking 2 young girls between the ages of 8 and I think 10. 11 years is all that guy got. And then you have Helen McEntee 6 months ago. Was it 6 months ago? Maybe even less time. You can't connect immigration with crime. Well, I sure as fuck can with that one. I can also link in Chico McCamda, because that was another guy that people were following around Dublin, and they basically ran him out of Ireland, from what I understand. The people did, not the politicians, not the law. This guy was ran out by the people, and that's where things seem to be going. And I'm not endorsing people engaging in vigilantism or anything like that, but I'm explaining cause and effect. And the only way this is going is that type of way, where you're going to have people going around areas that are moving people on. Like, I've seen people that are hanging around in tents up to no good, for example, not in my area now, but I've seen through videos. And when you hear them, like, about people and politicians and the media saying it's awful that people ran them out, I'm looking at that going, you think an encampment on people's doorsteps and in their area is acceptable, but then you're the same people then that are saying people protesting outside your home is unacceptable. It's the hypocrisy of it, and it's something that when you're awake to the game and you see it the way we do, it's very easy to understand. But these people, I think on the left-hand side, there's no saving them. And I keep saying that to people, there's no point in engaging with them. Use them for what they are, which is useful idiots, and for showing people what they think. But other than that, engaging with them, I think, is a fruitless situation. Do you know what I mean? Well, I don't know what your opinion is on that.
Oh, this is a really, really important point, and I'm glad we come on to this. It's very important, and I talk about this in the book, because we're going to have to first of all educate people about the nature of the brainwashing, and that's where the book comes in, to get everyone up to speed, right? And then we're going to have to make decisions about who's too far gone and who isn't, right? I mean, I agree that it's certain, when people get to a certain point of indoctrination, there's no turning back. And
No.
you know, everyone has their own. We mentioned the lads on X Spaces there. Everyone has their own take on things. On the one hand, I've thought about this a lot. On the one hand, I think it's important for us to create a social environment where everybody knows that to be a Marxist is to be a goofball and to be a patriot to your own, a traitor to your own people. And it's typically a kind of mental illness, right? We need to create that social environment, particularly so that when the young are growing up, they don't want to be seen as being the outlier weirdo, you know.
Yeah.
They have to do the same thing the cult has done. What the cult has done, it's brainwashed kids in particular to think that being a Marxist activist is cool. And this is actually being an authentic human being. We got to turn that all the way back and on its head. So on the one side, I say it's good to ostracize them, mock them, make them seem like idiots, expose them for what they are en masse, and literally marginalize them in society. But by the same token, like you say, if people are debating with them to try to change them and actually try to convince them, and I see that all the time, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know who they're talking to. They don't understand the potency of the indoctrination. So I suppose the big question is, it depends on why the person's debating them. If they're debating them to expose how bad they are and irrational they are, that's one thing. If they're trying to mock them and humiliate them, that's one thing. That's fine. But they're trying to actually change them by convincing them. That's not possible, because the indoctrination programs them in a certain way to see reality in a certain way, and they've got certain set belief systems, and they believe anything coming from my mouth to your mouth and so on. We're the brainwashed ones. They think they're sane, we're insane, and we've got all these crazy almost what's the word, proto-fascist or almost fascist ideas in our brains, and we're brainwashed. In fact, Herbert Marcuse was one of the front men of the Frankfurt School back in the day. I mentioned the Frankfurt School in the book, and he talked about this idea of liberating tolerance, where they needed to create a society where all sorts of they need to make it seem like a mental illness to be anti-Marxist. You know, if you're against this stuff, that you're insane, and they're saying. So this is why a lot of these lefties, they didn't lick it off a stone. You know, the indoctrination, they would have gotten it from university or from their parents or a socialist friend. And once the indoctrination gets into someone's brain, and from what I know, my understanding of the ideology, for many people, there's no turning back. Particularly after so many years have passed, they lose that neural plasticity factor, the ability of the brain to form new connections and break down old habits, you know. Hence, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So some people, I think, when they're at a certain point, they're done, you know, and we have to work that out. We have to try and make allowances. Maybe the very young who've just gone to college, if we catch them in time and get them away from all that social justice bullshit, maybe they've got a chance. But if you're having a conversation with someone in their mid-30s who thinks socialism is the answer to all society's ills, and there's no differences between cultures and gender as a social construct, forget it. They're too far gone, I think.
Yeah, look, I have people that are close around me, like, and you know, I don't like to get personal or anything like that really on the channel an awful lot, but I have a lot of people that are close to me, I do, and they'll be in rooms with me or at events with me, and they'll hear me say things, or I'll say it in a particular way where I'll ask someone that I either know or I don't know a particular question on how I phrase it, and they initially look and they will after the fact will say, I know what you were doing there, because I'm through my own way feeling out what this person is like, who they are, with some very simple questions and some very easy to understand and determine what this person is thinking and how they're thinking rapidly, quick. And I'm someone that I like to know what someone is thinking sort of within between 5 and 10 minutes, because I'll either continue to engage with you or I'll be like, nah, no interest in this, because I'm not swaying minds, you know. And it's like, even for example, you have to sometimes, because I do things as I do on the channel, but sometimes I make things more palatable for people as well, where I'll say, you know, you've got people that are coming into the country and have been a large scale invasion, would be how I would say it here. But I would say, you know, just I was down the doctors there last week, I couldn't get an appointment because the place is oversubscribed. I can't go to a new dental practice because they're full. And they'll go, oh yeah, and I'm like, but there's people arriving into this place that are getting medical cards that are being seen to no problem at all, you know. And then they realize that, oh yeah, just like, I'm working here and everyone's working here, and yet we're not entitled to any of that. But there's people rolling into the place, they're getting that, and then they're getting a house then across the way. So that sort of stuff, you awaken an awful lot of people with that sort of conversation. But like you were saying, when you've got people that are indoctrinated, it's something that I like to do on the channel. And the channel was wild at the beginning of the channel, which was I was talking about different entertainment spheres and different things like that. And people will probably look back at the content to be like, Jess, that's weird. What are you talking about those things for? Because you never know who you're pulling in as an audience. And that's my thing, which is, okay, these people have stolen Star Wars, they have stolen Marvel, they have stolen Transformers, various other properties. Any property you know and love growing up, it's been overtaken by these woke leftists and these Marxists, as Resolving Reality here has been talking about. And they have tried to manipulate these things into something that they aren't. And so what you have right now is a counterculture, which is us guys that are saying, hang on, look at this here. You've got big guys that in the entertainment sphere, like Dave Cullen, for example, here, an Irish guy that I'll give a shout out to. He does fantastic work. But you've also got the critical drinker who's Scottish and Nerdrotic, who's American, who are also highlighting these things. Look at what they're doing to Star Wars. Look at what they're doing with Disney. And people would say, well, why bother with that? Well, you don't know how many people go and see the newest, I don't know, Iron Man movie and they think it's shit and they don't know why it's shit. And then they tune into a review and then they go, oh, that's what was going on, because all these little things were happening and they were overtly bashing you then, and then you see the actors or actresses behind it. And the same thing is to be said about politicians and media. They will tell you all of the things that you are thinking and believing in are heinous. And I mean, no much more than the whole scam with the flu. I remember those times, like, I mean, they weren't that long ago, and I'm still very angry about them, and I always will be. Because you had people that were convinced that if you didn't put a piece of cloth over your face, that you were some sort of absolute whack job. Do you know what I mean? And yet you've got these goofballs that when you used to stand and talk to them and say, hang on, you realize that on the side of that box there that it says cannot prevent the likes of influenza. You know that that is exactly what this thing is not supposed to do. And then you're still doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you were, like, I spoke to people, and I mean educated people, and said to them, the flu has gone on the missing list for this year. And they actually shook their head and were like, yeah, it's unbelievable. Educated people that thought that the flu had just disappeared. It had gone on a gap year. And you're looking and you're like, this is the levels of indoctrination. And not only that, but stupidity is what I'd also say, but a lack of discernment to say something's wrong. But I do pity some people that were coddled by it and now have repercussions happening to them where they have had injuries and they are fall into the likes of the suddenlies, but it's up to their families to start coming out and start speaking out about it. And silence has been a big problem. And like you said there, and I think it's a very astute point and it's a correct point, which is they have bullied people so hard over the last few years to remain silent that telling people what you're thinking now is a very big tonic for a lot of individuals. And I've spoken to a lot of people in real life, and it's been a very big tonic. Like the relief, some people have physically looked relieved when I started to tell them about what I really think. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense to you? Like, it's a very weird thing that when you say something that's as plain as the nose in your face, that these people go, thank God someone said it. You're like, it's like everyone thinks this, but no one's saying it. There's one whack job in the room that thinks the other way, but we all think what we're seeing is what we're seeing, and that's what's important. You know what I mean? And a lot of people feel the same.
I think the COVID thing, one of the things it showed me was that there's definitely, we're not all equal, and some of us are just a little bit more interested in what's happening in the world, and therefore we tend to study into things. And we tend to, as we get more mature in life, we tend to study more and more, look at bigger picture things. And many of us in the world have accepted that there is definitely games being played on a big level, on a big global level. But some people can't get over that. They refuse to accept that there's such a thing as control on a global scale. That's why when we came along and said, can you not see that stuff's going on here? You got the UN involved, you got the WHO involved, you got who are both as a Marxist organization, the UN, of course, involved with the Chinese Communist Party. You can see the attack on the economy. All the governments are operating lockstep, injecting people with drugs and doping people up has been a feature of a lot of the communist regimes in the past, controlling people's movements and so on. Again, if people don't have the probably the right word is imagination, they don't have, not in a silly way, but in the ability to use your imagination to figure out what's going on. Some people don't have the imagination and the knowledge to accept this control on such a big level like that. Of course, they're not going to be accept that there's something going on here, that there's something they should be suspicious about. And they're the ones who decided to get into the queues and go and get the magic needle, not just once, but 3 or 4 or 5 times. So the COVID thing for me was a big event, like an experiment. I'm not saying someone designed it that way, but it almost worked out as being a big intelligence experiment, which a lot of people failed. Now, in terms of what was in the vaccines, I don't know. I think there was different batches going around. We know about the injuries and stuff. But one of my little theories of outside bets is we've seen, the whole, how it links in with other agendas, like, for example, the whole trans movement, right? Mm-hmm. So there might have been stuff in the vaccines that tend to push people more towards things like that, altering their DNA and so on. I don't want to go off the deep end and put on a tinfoil hat here, but who knows what was in them. But
no, it's a reasonable thing to say. It's a reasonable thing to say.
Yeah, so I think
it's a very reasonable thing to say, and the reason why I say that is, like, sorry, go on, Gad.
Oh, no worries, it's very delayed there. But that was basically.
No, I think you're a bit. I think it's a bit of a delay here. Go ahead.
No worries, right? So it's just the whole. Obviously, every move that's been played by the system has some sort of an objective, or at least several objectives. So one of the pieces of evidence that have come out in studies of people who've had the magic needle is miscarriages, right? Yes. So that ties into the whole eugenics thing, which is another thing. As I say in the books, Marxism is not the top of the totem pole. It's just the ideology that's used, the brainwashing that's used to make us all go along with the system. So my argument is, if we destroy the brain and understand the brainwashing, we can turn the tables on the system and derail the whole thing. It's the purpose of the book. But in terms of the vaccines and stuff, there is a eugenics element to the Marxist movement that stretches right back to the Fabian Society in 1884. There are a bunch of subversive socialists, well-to-do socialists, mind you. It sounds like a contradiction. It's supposed to be a movement of the poor workers, right? But they were big into eugenics, and which is a bit odd. They're into the idea of certain types of people don't have the right to live because they're a bit of a nuisance. This kind of mindset, and the UN as well has definitely eugenics, because you look at population replacement, that's essentially genocide is what they're talking about, which is more eugenics, the magic needle stuff, as well as the trans movement and feminism and abortion. They all have eugenics undertones. So it's logical to assume that the vaccine is part of that agenda. If it's producing miscarriages, it's part of the same thing, as well as the fact that the UN pushes all those agendas, including the whole trans ideology. We know that there's been a massive increase of people who have these gender issues and dysphoria, or whatever you want to call it. In other words, the amount of these people is increasing now in recent decades. Now, why is that? And I argue in the book it's because there's a toxic cocktail of factors, everything from the pesticides on the food to our modern lifestyles, radiation, the smartphones and all that crack, in addition to the contraceptive pill, which is pushed by the feminist movement, progesterone, of course, which affects the hormones, and a bunch of other factors as well. So it all really ties in together. I see the COVID agenda as just being part of all of that. It was clearly a play with certain objectives, I think.
100%, and also as well, like, as you're talking about food and all that, water's another thing. I know you won't mind giving him a shout out here in the stream because he does great work. He does, but the great Ferg Power, I was talking to him not so long ago, and I was saying to him, I was like, "What's the story with these water filtration systems?" And Ferg straight onto me. He's like, "Listen, they're good stuff. Go for it." And I went for it, and I have to say the difference has been night and day. But what you have to understand as well when it comes to those things, you're filtering out an awful lot of toxins and an awful lot of chemicals that are being dumped into the water. Your skin, for example, an awful lot of people don't know, but it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest organ in your body, in terms of, like, anything that goes onto your skin is being absorbed and it's going through your bloodstream. So these are things that are important, and they're things that people need to know. So not only if you're drinking the water, but if you're showering in it or bathing in it, that's also going to have an effect on you for sure. So you've got, for example, pipes that are very old, and then you've got fluoride being poured into them. And again, we're not going off the deep end here. These are all very true things that are happening. You've got the UK government recently saying that they wanted to pour fluoride into the water to improve people's dental hygiene, which is insane, because they've done studies on it across the world and that have said that it has had an issue with neurology, and it has had a big uptick in neurological issues for people. So that's one just instance of stuff that's been put into the water against your will. That's something that you're ingesting and you're cooking in it and all of these things. So yes, absolutely, things have changed over the years. You know, I've seen a post there by Fergal Bowers, and he was talking about the talmaldehyde. I never pronounced that word right, I don't think. And he had the gall yesterday to put out this post about, look at the women outside the doll here with the talmaldehyde, I think is the correct way to say it, survivors. And I'm looking at him like, yeah, because guess what, Fergal, I know someone that had some issue with regards to that there years ago, and they were told then it was safe and effective. So you were the same guy, by the way, Fergal, that was pushing out stuff 4 years ago, saying that was safe and effective. Do you know what I mean? So either Fergal is just a useless idiot and he is just pushing out stuff and doesn't understand, or he does, which is even more nefarious. And I think going back on the point what you were saying there about people and the lack of education or what age they are, that's a very important point, because if you were talking to someone in their 50s, now not everybody that's in their 50s, but 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, they do not want you to shatter their worldview, because they have lived for an incredible amount of time according to them, and there is an incredible amount of time. But that when you decide to shatter someone's worldview, it's a unique experience. And I mean, it's something that I think most of us went through over the last few years. If not, you hadn't gone it be through it beforehand. But you start to see things for what it is. Like friends of mine, you know, best friends that I would have had, I completely see them different. And I'm looking and I'm like, that person now totally was all right with going and taking these things to go to the pub, you know, bent to the will of the government, no problem. Whereas I stood and fought and I said, no, I'm not going to have this. I'm not taking anything. And if they try to come for me, they can try. But like, this is where you have things now. You've got people that have gone through a mass awakening and others then that have sleptwalked into this complete totalitarianism that we're seeing right now. And the fact that it stretches worldwide, I think, is such an abstract thing for people to think that they don't think their government would A, lie to them, B, do anything harmful to them, and C, then don't think that they're linked across the world. I mean, these are just three simple things that are very provable, and some people don't think any of it's true. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fascinating thing that we're dealing with, the psychology of it as well.
Yeah, I think, and as well, my personal opinion on this is all of this stuff is really forcing us to ask ourselves some hard questions, to sit down and look at yourself in the mirror, look at yourself dead in the eye, or stand there in the bathroom and look straight into the mirror, into your eye, and ask yourself, what kind of a person are you? Are you going to be one of the also-rans? Are you going to be one of the people who was easy to manipulate and went along with things, or spend like a hedonistic life or a frivolous life, you know, absorbed in personal things or money or whatever it is, and not make some sort of a contribution and not participate in the big game we're all playing here, you know, the big game of freedom versus control, whatever you want to call it. And we're clearly not all equal, and we've all definitely dealt with that. Those of us who are interested in the truth and so on, we've all had to deal with that personally, where you see these divisions and schisms being created, sometimes within families, you know, our immediate families and so on. And it's been, this whole thing is a big test. This globalist machine we're up against is a big test of not just how outspoken we are or talented we are or whatever it is, but also our personal inner strength, you know. It really tests the old toughness. And again, it's part of the divisive thing of the whole ideology, I think. It splits people up, and we're not all equal, and we have to just stick to people who suit us, because obviously we can't make a difference as individuals. We have to find ways to unite as groups.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's like even through the night we were on a space there. I think Keith was hosting, I think yourself was there as well, and Todd Salby was there. And there was one guy in particular, I don't know, the guy might be in the chat here or something like that if you listen to the channel or anything like that. I highly doubt it after what he said during the night. But he was going on and he was saying that I initially thought, I was sort of moving around, and I heard this guy starting to think, because I had the phone down and I was listening to the space. And I heard him I think Bob was talking as well. Big shout out to Bob, by the way. But this guy was talking about how if he didn't take two of the Voldemorts, that his marriage was on the line. And I was like, I don't think I heard that correctly. And I said, I don't think that guy actually said that. Do you know the way sometimes you think you mishear something and you're like, damn, there's no way he said that. And about, I'd say 30 seconds later, he said, I wanted to go to that protest, but I wasn't allowed. And she wouldn't let me. I couldn't go to it. She said, you're not going to that. And my marriage, and I said to him, straight away, I was just like, you need to reclaim your bollocks, my friend. Because these people that are on our side of the fence that are engaged in that sort of stuff, yeah, I'll tell you now, lads, like this is what Emma is even talking about here now is this feminism stuff like that. You need to understand that you need to be standing up and being counted at this stage of the game. And the women of Ireland are hungry for that. Like, like here's the thing. There's every single week we do something like this where we do a stream. There's women in the chat and there's women in the comments now that are baying. I know you mean baying for a nationalist, man. It's unbelievable. They keep saying it, that they're going around and they're seeing guys that are like, no, I'm not interested in these guys at all. The hunger from the women of this country is absolutely there. Now what you do with that is up to you, and what you do with in terms of talking to them and chatting them up, whatever it might be. Maybe you need a bit of help there in the game or whatever like that. But the thing is that there's women that are out there that are open to the idea of nationalism, and now at this moment in time are looking for a partner in that frame of mind. And I think that that's a fascinating thing, because we've seen over the last few years that this leftism has been steered. And I mean, you look at no further than Mary Lou McDonald, that this leftism has been steered by fat, obese, disgusting looking leftist white women. And it's across the board everywhere. You see Michelle O'Neill. I mean, she looks like Miss Piggy. I mean, I'm sure her husband, if she has one, looks like Kermit the Frog. But like, you've got these people that are out there that are dictating to you, and you're like, who are you to be talking to people? Like, I seen a post there, I think Toby put one up there yesterday or today, or no, it was yesterday, it was. And he showed like a Sinn Féin chair meeting of like people saying, yeah, we should talk. You want to see the round of people that they had. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was like the Muppet Show. It was like something out. That's even harsh on the Muppet Show. It was like something out of Jim Henson's workshop. The 5 shinners that were sitting there were uncontrollably repulsive. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, these people are disgusting as their policies. You know what I mean? And this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with people now that are actually, I think the leftism and I think the Marxism, I think morphs a person not only, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but not only psychologically, but I also think physically. Like, you look at Demi Lovato. Demi Lovato used to be a very attractive looking woman. And this is always a good point and talking point that people use. And then she decided to say she was a day dem. And she became like a trowel. You want to see the state of her now. Like, she's in bits. She's like Lego. She's in bits. And now she's gone back to saying, my pronouns are now she, her. And she's starting to drop the weight now and not look too bad, but she still looks fucked up. But like, the point of the matter is that this thing not only psychologically affects you, it also physically affects you. Sam, what's your man's name? The fella that does Sam Smith. He's another one.
Oh, the singer,
Didn't look too bad about 10 years ago. Now you look at him now and you're like, holy moly. Saying like, it's bad stuff.
Yeah, is it Elliot's Page? It was Ellen Page. She was the bird who was in Interstellar years ago.
Yes,
she's like, she used to be cute Canadian looking. I like little brunettes, right? So I thought she's a bit of a cracker. She is, and I kind of forgot about it. And you seen the recent photos of her going, oh my god, what a waste! What a waste, terrible, you know. And I talk about this in the book, that again, the whole satanic inversion thing of being against nature. It's one of the undertones of the ideology, where it destroys everything that's beautiful and turns things upside down and inside out. And, part of the trans thing, obviously, it just destroys beauty. And what it does, it destroys femininity in females and destroys masculinity in females. So you brought up the thing earlier about women wanting real men. Well, I don't mean to not start an argument here. I don't want to play into the sex debate here, but women have had a role to play in that as well, because a lot of them are bought into feminism, which is anti-masculine, because feminism turns things upside down. It's brainwashed females into thinking that they should compete with males and that they're equal, not that they should be complementary to males. We're supposed to be complementary, not equal. Men are supposed to be men, women are supposed to be women, and there's not supposed to be competition between them. But what the ideology does is it turns everything upside down and inside out, brainwashes people, makes females more combative and masculine in so many ways, takes their femininity away on several levels, while making men into these betas who are so desperate to fit in with these indoctrinated females that they're going to go along with them, and they'll play the beta game to give them what they want, but they're sacrificing their masculinity in the process oftentimes. And the females are complaining, where are all the real men gone? It's a big mess. I'm not blaming the women for this. Everyone has to take responsibility for how much they bought into this bullshit, but there's definitely blame on both sides. And it just comes all back to the same thing. What we need to do is return back to more traditional values, that we should, especially with the young, teach them to learn how to get into stable monogamous relationships and to get good at them, and to eventually try to develop relationships that produce kids at some point in their lives, and to go more traditional. That's the way. And I think there's many benefits to all that, including trying to fix the problem of the birth rates. Now, to quote our good scholarly friend, Mr. Mike Connell, if he's listening, this would all help people to basically ride for Ireland.
He has some nuggets, he does, in fairness to him. He's some man for one man, he is, when he comes up with these nuggets. Yeah, and hearty words. And noises is coming. My favorite thing that he's ever said is, they want to put you in jail for noises that are coming out of your face. And I'm like, you know what, that's the best way I could ever articulate. And I mean, he articulates it brilliantly, to explain how stupid this hate speech stuff is, and how anything to do with these people saying hate this and hate that is ridiculous. But like you're talking about there, yeah, you've got people that are in this situation, and for example, the feminism situation, but it's also been dictated to them by, and I often say on this channel as well about the likes of Love Island, that is, it's projecting negative relationships to women constantly, and to be promiscuous. Like, that's what Love Island is about. It's about promiscuity, and it's about women having the choice of who they want in that villa, and the fellas have to make some sort of play for them. But at any moment in time, it can be switched up, and they can decide, no, I'm not going to be with you anymore, I'm going to be with this guy over here. So there's a constant movement from that, and the promiscuity that's on show is then being projected then to people on the outside, and they think that's normal. Now, that's not only that, then it's not, and the men are very feminine in that. Like, I mean, the fellas in that are browbeaten constantly, and then they'd be crying on that. It's outrageous stuff. But like, the other side of it then, and that's making a big play for what's going wrong with society right now, is, say, for example, injections into people's faces of Botox and lip filler and all of these other cosmetic things that are causing untold damage. Like, that's making a big problem for them now, because you've got women on that are 24 and they look 52. Like, they're very, very much so, what would be the word that's used here, ragged and worn out looking. And that's got to do with all of the cosmetics that's been given to them, but also at the same time, it's also, I believe personally, the lifestyle. Like, I know people that are in their 30s and cracking on, and some women, for example, that are saying that they don't want kids, but the panic buttons start to get hit. I know someone that's in their 40s and the panic button has been hit, because she is actually, in fairness to her, she's actually very honest, and she'll say that she has missed the boat and that she prioritized her career instead of having kids. And look, it's to each person their own, and some people that are good people and great people are unable to have them for whatever reason it might be. But you have people now that have been fed this kind of Sarah Jessica Parker, Kim Cattrall lifestyle for years, and then they realize then once they hit 40, bang, it's over, and that the cats in the apartment ain't gonna love you the same, you know what I mean? And they see their buddies that have moved on. So these things that have not only affected women, but they've also affected men, because there's a lot more men now that are happy to be solitary and happy to be on their own, and they'll go and do what they're doing, but they're not procreating either, because they're not settling down with anybody. So it's caused a big schism. Whereas you see, for example, when it ties into the immigration situation, and listen, I know people that are Islamic and I know people that are African. They don't hold the same views that we do. They don't believe in homosexuality. They do not believe in the transit movement, let me tell you that. And these people do believe in the family unit and the nuclear family. Like, these people intrinsically believe in that, and they will have, and like Mike is saying, they'll be riding for Afghanistan, whereas Ireland's not even coming into the picture here. So that's how they view things, and they also view things as being very insular insofar as being with themselves, their own people, their own race as such. Like, I know people, I mean, the stuff that some of the guys that I know that are African, that will make other Africans blush, with the things that they say. Like, they're incredibly interesting to listen to, is what I would say, from a point of view of how they view things in demographics and race and, I would say, lineage. It's incredible. It's something like I've never seen before, and a lot of people don't understand that. And it happened on a space not too long ago with Circle Soldier. There was this woman on gas bagging over about how Africans were being treated in Cork, and I was just like, "Have you ever been to a place in Africa?" No. I said to her, "Well, you should go to South Africa and hang around the tin pot sheds that are there and see how you get on." Like, this is the thing. This person that's advocating for an unlimited amount of people from wherever country coming into ours has no idea about the outside world. like some people have just a very small mind when it comes to the world. They haven't traveled. They don't understand these things. And like, this is where I want to go with the next point. Are you a well-traveled man, and has that factored into your thinking and what you did with the book Red Pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good one actually. And before I answer that, just to address what you were saying there as well, like you talked about there's a massive differential being created between indigenous populations and the migrant wave. Like you were saying, there's no feminism or trans or abortion in the Islamic wave, for example. So it's going to lead to demographic replacement. I talk about this all the time. But just to finish on the other thing, what you said, the key to the feminist brainwashing and any type of Marxist brainwashing as well is that it gets into people's egos. It makes them more interested in getting their kicks. And that's where you hear, if you ask the majority of people, if you ask the majority of indoctrinated females or contaminated, if you ask them what's the purpose of life, they'll say to be happy. Happiness is the purpose of life.
Do you know the signs? Live, laugh, love. You know those signs? If you have one of those signs in your house, get them the fuck out now.
you bought the con if you got the sign, you know.
Yeah.
You got the bumper sticker. So that's the key. And you see the little eyes lighting up. What's the purpose of life? To be happy. Really? Okay. And what does that involve? Well, maybe a bit of travel or this and that and so on. But what about duty? You know, so traditionally in societies gone back millennia, people knew they had certain duties in society. Men had certain roles and females had certain roles. The females' roles was to have kids at some point in their lives and to support the men. And the men's roles was to support the women and look after the kids, as well as physically fight to protect our civilization from attack, which is a pretty big responsibility. So they're both doing roles the other one can't do. And another big role the men have was to build and maintain civilization, physically build it. Another thing that women can't do that men can do. So they're both, again, not equal, but the symbiosis there. And a lot of it's to do with duty. And it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. And it certainly wasn't very hedonistic. And that's one of the big things that's changed in the 20th century with the onset of Marxism, feminism, and everything else that's brought into society, is that it's brainwashed people to be egomaniacal and hedonistic in their mindset, where they're mostly concerned about what makes them feel good. And like you were saying there, by the time people realize that the what you call it, the merry-go-round, whatever it's called, I'm forgetting the word. But the time that the ride is over, the entertainment ride is over. I don't excuse the sexual pun there, but by the time they realize that is over in their mid-30s or a little bit later, and the opportunities have kind of run out a little bit, it's too late. They missed their chance. They were too hedonistic, and this is a major problem. It's one of the factors that's leading to the collapse of the West. But I can expand on any of that if you want to in a minute. But back to your question about traveling and stuff. Yeah, I think that has kind of helped. And like I've lived in a few Western countries. I lived in the UK for a while. I lived in Australia as well for a bit, and I've noticed a lot of the patterns of behavior. I've always been very interested in people's behavior on a social level. You know, I've never done psychology in college or anything like that, and I've been very interested in people's behavior. And you start seeing the patterns, and obviously, like, you know, years of on that subject, there are years of dating women and all that, and having different experiences in different countries. You do start to see patterns, right? And that's what switched me on to the subject of feminist brainwashing. In terms of seeing Marxism in general, that was something that just came about more from personal study, really, as well as paying attention to current affairs everywhere. But the thing is, nowadays, if you're traveling around now in Western countries, pretty much the same shit is going on everywhere. So wherever you go, you're learning about the same stuff, I think.
100%, yeah, and everyone's dealing with the same sort of situation, like, you know, and again, this is what we're dealing with. We're talking about people that have been cultivated into this mind melding of, you know, nonsense, and they're hitting their 30s and they think, like, I know a girl, for example, like that, stunning looking girl, but has decided, and this is the thing, you know, she's decided to post, like, every year, I'm going to Ibiza, and like on again, off again relationships with guys, but like, nobody's looking at that like as a bloke, as a perspective. They're going, you've been to Ibiza, yeah, you're probably like a, you know, you're probably like a, what should we say, a thoroughbred that does be running around, what's a Leopardstown race course, you know what I mean, once a year. But like, this is the thing, like, no one's looking at, she's like a rower that bloody Lance Armstrong's been up on, you know what I mean? Like, it's unbelievable. Like, nobody is looking at that and saying, like, again, beauty, like a
badge of honor, like
badge of honor, yeah. Like, beauty aside, like, heading over to Ibiza is read through by every fella as to what it is. Like, every guy knows what you're doing. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Like, oh, I've had this lovely experience abroad, and you're like, yeah, I'm sure you have, you know what I mean, because everything that goes on over there. But like, this is what I'm saying to you as well. Like, what's important is that you start to kind of bring back to, and I think this is where things are going. I think we are going back to traditional values, and I do see it amongst my own peer and friend group myself. Like, women have become more traditional and have become like the prettiest girl in the room is always the girl that's the most covered up insofar as and the most respectable looking and the one that speaks well and is modest and that. And you're like, well, that's how things go. And the same is said about women and their friends group. Like you'll always know which one they dislike the most. And the first thing that a woman will say about another woman to cut her character down is she'd say she's a slut. You know what I mean? That's the first thing they all say, because they all intrinsically know that the promiscuity is a negative thing. But going on what we were talking about earlier on about the travel point as well, like, I think that that's an important point for an awful lot of people insofar as what I'm speaking about there, when people might misconstrue that and say, well, the weekend I beat it, but that's traveling ninja. No, that's not the same as going around and visiting different places and cultures and understanding what's going on there. That's a very different situation rather than going over to Ibiza to be filled up by Juan, Raquel, Mirandes or whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean? Or Ahmed or whoever, your Kelechi from Nigeria. That's a completely different situation there. What you're doing is you're going, and as Emmett is saying there, you're enjoying yourself. You're engaging in hedonistic stuff, and like as I said earlier on, like, give a shout out to the series Rome. Like, one of the scenes, Mark Antony is in it, and he's with this woman, and she's a very powerful woman in the Roman Empire, and she asks him to be married to her, and he says no, and she's shocked, and she says, but why? And this is after they've done the deed, and he says, you're nothing but an old harpy. And she loses it and slaps him, but he said what he has said, and he is true to his word. He's like, you're going to be nothing more to me than what you are right now. And I think I was looking at it and I was laughing, because I was like, that show must be at least 15 years old. And I was like, all of the stuff that was said and done in that show, and how look, the Roman Empire, don't get me wrong, they did an awful lot of up there and out there and weird things. Don't get me wrong on that one. But some of the things that they do on it, you can see it, like even the blood rituals that they do on the show. I'm looking at that going, they're doing the same thing now in concerts. You look at Madonna's concert and all the weird things that are going on there. Sam Smith doing the same thing. Like, all of these things that were perceived as weird and all that, now they're starting to try and normalize again. But I do think, like, the point of what Mark Antony was saying was quite interesting. And I do think, as we've been speaking here at length, the entertainment industry, amongst others, have had a big effect. Next point that I wanted to bring you to, and I suppose, because, like, I know you're short on time here tonight as well, but when you're looking at, say, for example, the media and how that's been a captured institution, like, what is your outlook on them for the future? Do you think that they're going to still try to brainwash people and try and bring them back on side with things that are favorable, or do you think that they're going to just go all out now and be like, no, you guys are racists and islamophobes, and leave it at that?
Well, actually, one of my favorite analysts who I included in the book was a guy called Yuri Bezmenov. He was a Soviet defector who was active in the 1960s. He went to the States in 1970. So he had some great information about Marxism and subversion and what it does to societies and all. He popularized the concept of ideological subversion, which is a system the Soviets used to destroy countries with propaganda, essentially. And he said that one of the symptoms, what happens eventually in societies, you see a massive disconnect between the media and the people, to the point where it's nothing but propaganda, essentially. And what they actively do is, as we've seen already, is they just constantly counter everything that the patriots do in the country. Like, some of the stories going around recently, the one you mentioned earlier, they're peddling that idea that they're trying to connect the Irish movement with the Ku Klux Klan, talking about Tommy Robinson. They're going to counter everything and just be a constant conveyor belt of propaganda. And in the book, I called Mortier like the glorious commissarial department of revolutionary propaganda, some shit like that, because that's essentially what they are. They're just a conveyor belt for this shit. And who knows if they're going to stop? Obviously, because it's a state broadcaster, it's now the propaganda arm of the government, essentially, and it's not representative of the people at all. And I suppose, I don't know how we're going to resolve that. It's on the list of a lot of things we have to sort out. But it would be nice to have a more kind of balanced news service. And, sometimes you look at, like, say, we've only got the one state broadcaster, and it's a small country. We've got some other, channels, or other Virgin Media, etc. But say you look at somewhere like the States, or even Sky News Australia. And I'm not saying I necessarily trust them, but they put out videos like the Rita Palfanani show, or whatever her name is, that they do bits about mad lefties and stuff and kind of mock them. So, not all the mainstream media is the same. And in America as well, there's some inspiration there with a lot of the more patriotic channels, whether they're big ones or smaller or state level media. It'd be nice to have something more like that basically in the future at some stage.
I do think we're building towards it though. Like, you know what I mean? Like when I see, and like you're saying, you look at RTE there, they're going to get a 720 million euro bailout. And that's a failing business. If anybody else had a failing business here, like you'd be just left to the dogs, that'd be it. But what's happening is now you've got a major machine that's been trumped by people on spaces like yourself and Satirical Soldier and Keto and Toby as well that are out there. You've got a machine that has been, I would say, taken. It's kind of, to me, like when you watch the Avengers Infinity War and Thanos was smacked by Iron Man and he looks at it and he's bleeding and he's sort of looking at it going, you done all of this for a drop of blood. But the point was that Iron Man and Tony Stark went home now and this guy bleeds. There's a way to get this guy. And that to me was what happened with the likes of Gavin Pepper and Malachy Steenson getting into the positions that they got in, along with Patrick Quinlan as well. Getting into the positions that they got in, it was to let everybody know and send a shockwave around that, like, this is possible. This is a doable situation. And to me, I think that that's a very effective situation, that those guys have basically ran on campaigns on social media. And obviously as well, I'm saying that now, but also door-to-door stuff that they've done. They've gone out and canvassed and they've done the jobs. They've gone out and been at protests. They've gone and spoken at those things, whereas other people haven't. And I always find it funny when politicians don't understand how people are giving votes to the likes of Gavin and to Malachy and to Patrick and many others that are out there. I mean, Derek Bloig had a terrific showing he did in Cork, and Phil Dwyer did very well out in Tallaght. And so did Jan as well, too, from the National Party. And so did many others that are out there. Like, what you have right now, I think, is a melting pot of people that are very interested in turning this around. And I think the media are afraid right now because they do see that people are starting to gain momentum. The fact that there's been talk about the Exchequer stepping in and taking, that's essentially taxation. So they're taxing you to keep RTE alive. That's theft as far as I'm concerned, because if you don't want to pay for a service, you shouldn't be made give money to these people to keep them going. Because people have spoken with their wallets and said, no, thanks, we're all right, I don't want to know anymore. But I do think the propaganda wing of the government is going to try to encroach and get larger. You see that they're setting up the Commission de Monde. They think that that's a great thing. They think that the idea that Elon Musk has revealed that the EU were asking for a secret deal to censor people online, they think that that's a wonderful thing. You've got Cynthia Muraku that allegedly got into a position legitimately, who was calling for people to be censored online, has now gotten a place in Europe, which is insane to think that people would willingly do that and support that. But also, as I also say, the misinformation is information that they want you to miss. The fact that they don't bring people on, like, you can bring John McGurk on, and I don't like John McGurk personally speaking, because I do think that he shills and he stands up for things that are completely opposite of what I would. He's entitled to his views, of course, but he is probably the most milquetoast person that an RTE or Virgin Media could bring on. Bring on Satirical Soldier. You know who that guy is. You know who he is. You know who Philip Dwyer is. Bring those guys on, because I'm telling you the reason why they won't bring those guys on, if you wanted to give a true representation of how people feel, because they're right about them in the media, they won't bring those guys on because they would make a holy show of them, and they would point out the problems that are going on. Only last week, I think Virgin Media had a video out where there was a journalist that was basically losing the rag on the station. I can't remember the presenter's name, the blonde woman with the short hair. And he was saying, like, no, this immigration thing is out of control. And she was like, no, it's not now. And he's like, no, it is. Because when you go around looking at tents around the place looking like San Francisco, that's when you have a massive issue. Yesterday, we seen a video that came out there. I think Fionn O'Shea, who was another one in the media, was given out to Catherine Martin about being 45 minutes late, and that another journalist didn't get to answer a question. So, like, to me, I think the media are keenly aware that their position is very precarious right now, because nobody believes them. And when you've not gotten people to believe you over the years for telling lies, you're not going to believe them, get people to believe you against the boy who cried wolf. So when you see people turning around and looking at channels like this one and your one, you've also got a YouTube channel as well. Like, when you have that happening, then that's a major problem for these people, that they're like, first of all, you're not controllable. And second of all, then there's no telling what you can say and who you can say it about. Do you know what I mean? And this is a very big problem for these people. These people know that they're lining up balls for us to fire, but they're still doing it. Do you know what I mean? Which is a big positive, and I think it's a very helpful strategy. I think that they keep talking and saying stupid things.
Yeah, the whole alt media thing is has been a real lifeline, and I know there's been like channel culls in the past, and there's a big cull. I mentioned in the book, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, whatever, where they took out Dave Cullen, Mr. Rowan Torino, and Gem O'Doherty, and so on. So, and we were talking about it off air as well, how like you're investing this time and energy, and they could pull the rug out from underneath you as well. YouTube, as we know, is compromised. Well, there used to be, whatever her name is, Wozniacki. She's in the book as well. Yeah. Feminist CEO, whatever. So, long may it continue with the alt media stuff. But there's also the issue of shadow banning and stuff like that as well. It's harder, arguably, to get traction with things as well. We know that the platforms like to suppress more nationalistic points of view. So the whole thing is a mess. It'd be really nice if Ireland ended up with some sort of an alt media brand that was made by genuine patriots, that was like a website with a great reach, where maybe people like ourselves kind of pulled resources and effort and something like, I know it's more work and so on, but I would see something like that as being impactful and as being a real kind of threat to the system. And it's interesting that X, like I was on it years ago. When I was on it last, it was like 2018 or something. And when I got back onto it only just before Christmas there, it's all different. And it has all these X spaces and stuff, which is great, and I think that to me has been a real exceptional thing. But yeah, we just have to keep going and doing what we're doing, basically, and keep the flow of information going, I think.
I think it's super important that the X thing has changed. I mean, the acquisition of that by Elon Musk has been a game changer, because it has forced, like, it's like, I don't like recently the change that was made to it, where the like count, for example, you can't see who has liked tweets. I don't think that that's a positive move, because they already have an issue with bots on the platform anyway. But when you see goofballs that are getting thousands of likes, and you're like, this person didn't crack 10 likes there beforehand, now they're getting 500, 600, 800, and it's all leftist shit. Like, I know that there's game playing and there's manipulation going on there for sure, and that's a big problem. And I think the like thing should be reverted back to the way it was. But I do understand the reason for which those steps were taken, and the reason why those steps were taken was that there was people being fired from their jobs for liking tweets that were deemed offensive. So that's the reason why the like count was hidden. Now, not if you were, like, for example, supporting the fella who was just fired from Mr. Beast channel. You weren't fired for liking and engaging and that sort of stuff. It was liking and engaging things to do with nationality, or pointing out who might be behind an awful lot of what's going on here in the world. So to me, again, the momentum, I think, in the last 5-6 weeks has seemed to really shift. And I think right now, I think people are done with all of this nonsense. And I think the immigration situation here has pushed people further away from the mainstream. And that, I think that's where alternative media and I think other people are coming into play. Like, I can't believe that this channel has 8,000 subscribers right now. Like, that's wild to me. And I remember, I mean, tonight now we've been doing well with viewership. We've done viewership of over 140 here tonight. But, like, I used to have 5 people watching a live stream. Do you know what I mean? And now it's grown to that. And then there's people that will view after the fact on a time that suits them, because I know it's a Thursday night. So, like, I know all of that's going on. And I think it's very important that people keep pushing. And the more people, like you said, and I agree with you, the more people popping up, the better. Because if you got people now that are turning up to protest and they're making names for themselves and they're putting up stuff on a channel, great, because there's thousands of people out doing it. I'll tell you this for a fact, guys, and whilst I'm talking to you here was about suppression. Suppression is 100% happening on this platform. They didn't want the videos of Culock getting out there. They didn't want the Guard one getting out there, and they didn't want the one that was Paul Fitzsimon's father, that elderly man that was pepper sprayed. They were trying to suppress that here on this platform. So be aware of that happening too, because it is important that you do like videos and share them and subscribe to channels, because whilst you might think, I like tuning into this person, that greatly helps in the algorithm to push people forward and to get that information out there. Because you have, for example, a party in Sinn Féin and they have just shut comments off. We're talking to the community, but we'll shut the comments down. We'll block replies. We'll block you. You know, it's a new feather in my cap now this week. I've been blocked by the political party Sinn Féin, which means, and the leader, which means that one of two things have happened. Either a memo has been sent around and told to their people that are handling these accounts to block me, or they've been viewing the content and have realised that it's bad news for them, because when I'm pointing out stupid things that they're doing, they can't stand over it. So I think that that's a great thing to be happening right now. Before we jump off now, Resolving Reality, you have the book, where I've dropped a link in the chat there as well for where to buy the book. But if you shout, yeah, there it is there. Give us another one there. Give us another one there. Make sure hold it up to the camera if you can there. Show the people the front of it. Yeah, very nice. You're muted there, just so you know.
There we go now.
Yeah, there.
The sheeny with the lights.
Lovely.
It's look at the size of it.
It's a big bad boy.
It's a monster. You won't read that all in one night. That'll take you through quite a few cups of teas, I reckon.
So where do people pick it up if they're watching and they haven't clicked into the links in the chat there?
So Omnia Veritas is the publisher. So the best, if you're in this neck of the woods like Ireland, UK, and Western Europe or whatever, you can go straight to the publisher's website. So it's omnia-veritas.com. The link is actually, there's a page on my website dedicated to the book. So resolvingor.com, like resolving or for Romeo, just the letter. So resolvingor.com. And there's a page there with all the different links, more info about the book and the links where you can get it. But I definitely recommend the publisher if you're in this neck of the woods.
Excellent, there is. That's brilliant, there is. And how many pages are in the book?
So this one here, it's out in a few different languages. So it's out in English plus French, Spanish, German, and Italian. So they're slightly different in the page count. This one is 617 pages, including the index. So it's a spicy meatball.
If you had said 666 pages, I'd have booed you off the channel there.
Yeah, I was worried about that. I thought, shit, I hope all the other translations, I hope they don't go anywhere near it. So 606 would have been bad enough.
Yeah.
But no, I don't start any rumors or anything.
I remember getting that like on the channel when they had like I think it was like 6.6 and so on subscribers. I was like, please people, just subscribe to it. Just give it like 4 people just subscribe, please. Just get me off it. Like, and in fairness, now people did like lickety split. Like, but oh yeah, that's great. That is the book is in and available in multiple languages. It's called Red Pandemic. There, as Emmett was shown there. It's a book by Emmett Connor, and it's we've read excerpts as well too. I believe that you're going to be doing more excerpts on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I did. So there's a preface, an introduction, and then there's 13 sections. So the preface is like only so many pages. I think it was like 10 pages or something. Introduction was like 26 pages. The introduction took me about 3 days to make the audiobook version. So I might just do section 1 and then leave it there, because it just gets unfeasible because the length. Like recording the voiceover and editing and polishing and stuff like that. So I might just do one more section and then leave it there, but we'll see how we go. But it is a big commitment, doing the voiceover can kind of be fun, but you have to get it right. So you're sitting at the mic for quite a few hours. Then there's the editing and so on, which is nightmarish. You end up with a sore arse from the numbness. So I'll probably do one more and then leave it there, but we'll see how we go.
Between saying you have a sore arse from that and liking Ellen Page there earlier on, there'd be question marks around you now later on. I'm only joking. That's taking a mick here.
That's the way it goes nowadays. Sure, it's rumors all the time. I'm a Satanist and I'm into trannies now.
You could, you probably identify it as trans. That'd probably be the best thing for you. You could identify as a transgender person. The book would do very well. No, I'm joking. No, look, it'll do very well as is, because as I've seen it through the chat tonight now, I haven't got the chance to go through all the chat tonight. We've got great people that are in here. We've got Air that's in here as well. We've got Ferg turned up as well too. He must have heard the name and he was in here, in fairness. And he's always here. We've had Satirical Soldier. Amongst the many others that are here, we've got the channel mods. I really appreciate everything that you do here, guys, as well. What I'll be doing after this show, folks, is I'll be putting the link in the description down below of Emmett's book and his channel. I'll also be putting it into the comments as well, so that if you're going to look for the book or anything like that, it'll be down below. There'll be links there. Okay, so that would be how I will put things in down below. So if you're just wondering, like, because I know some people that say, where's the description link? Sometimes it just puts the stuff in the comments, so that's easy for people to get to, especially if you're getting there. But it's a fantastic read from all accounts from what I've heard. You've made a number of very astute points here tonight that I'm sure people will be fascinated to hear about in the book and expand upon, I would say. So I appreciate you coming on here tonight. Armchair Limerick National says, sound tonight, welcome back. Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate being back here tonight, and again, all the love that's been shown. Is there anything else that you wanted to finish up on? Is there anything else that you wanted to say? I know you're on Twitter as well at Resolving Reality, so if anyone's not following them, follow over there as well.
Great. Yeah, great. It's been great. Thanks, Ninja. I knew this was going to be a good one, and I hope everyone enjoyed the chat and stuff. And the big thing I would just say to finish up then is that this book is my gift to patriots around the world. If they get stuck into this it's another weapon in the arsenal, to what we're dealing with, and it really explains the nature of the enemy. And I firmly believe that if people are more informed about this issue, we could change improve the ideological health of the country and get more people over to the nationalist side, and that's what's going to really turn things around.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. And I think this thing is going to get tougher before it gets better, but also people need to be tougher for this to get better. This whole being a doormat to the world, it's not going to happen anymore. And to people that are looking to do nefarious things about you and your family and the country as a whole, like it can't stand for much longer. And to be honest with you, I think we're at that point now where it's a turning point. A big shout out to the people at Culock. You've been doing a wonderful job in keeping the spirits up, and you've started something again. You've reinvigorated and reignited the passion here in Ireland, because when you see it in Dundalk, when you see it in Kilkenny as well, like it's only getting started, and it's exciting times it is to be here right now. But again, I want to give a big thanks to my guest here tonight here, Resolving Reality, Emma Connor there. I really appreciate you for being on here. It's been a wonderful night. I've really enjoyed it. These 2 hours have flown by, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon about on Twitter and on Spaces. So, guys, another good one to get Emma on as well is Spaces on Twitter. So you'll be notified generally as well by people that you follow that you can go live there. You go live here on YouTube as well, don't you?
Occasionally, but recently I've just been putting all my energy into doing short videos and promoting the book. But we'll see about the live stuff.
Definitely. I think that the likes of the short videos are very important. I'm going to be doing much more of them myself as well. So look, again, I want to say I really appreciate you coming on. A big shout out to the chat as well too, guys. You've been phenomenal again here tonight. Like, I've been looking throughout the show as well, and when I'm conducting this, and there's nothing but love there is. So, and a lot of support for you there as well. So I really appreciate that. Okay, so look, I'll be chatting to you soon. Be more content coming out during the week, be showing you what's going on here around the country, giving me own views and all that about these things. We'll have a laugh when it comes to these things, because we have to have a laugh and mock these people and really enjoy ourselves whilst this momentum swing has happened and we're on the up now. We're on the ascension, And something I want to say to people as well is become unreasonable, because that's where we are right now. These people can't reason to you anymore. These people on the left or in the government or the media. No, don't reason with these people. It's not worth it. Become unreasonable. So anyway, I'll also say keep telling the truth, and I'll talk to you later.